can't see you, Mayor.
Yeah, it's okay.
You wanna
But-
trade me
but-
places so they can see
no,
you?
no.
More
But
important
watch
to see
and
you
see,
than
'cause
me.
if Debbie puts up her hand or anything, because sometimes can't they? Like, we maybe will hear her talk, but if she's muted, she might just put up her hand. I don't know. Okay.
So you can just unmute yourself and.
And talk? Okay,
Yeah, she has the ability to.
okay. That'll be good.
Do they have a game tonight?
Yes, the biggest game of the year,
Oh, no, and you're here.
Montana. I'll watch it on,
You'll watch it on your phone. What time do they start? 7? Is it 7?
So we need to talk really fast? I
yes,
guess?
so move
Yeah.
along. Yeah, I don't want to rush you.
Well, it's 6 o'clock, and so we're going to go ahead and start our work meeting with Hooper City Council. The first thing we're going to have is a presentation from Jeff Morgan, who is with JUB Engineering. So we're going to turn the time over to you.
Okay, how many minutes do I have so I know how much Reader's Digest condensed I need to make this?
Well, so we figured you might need do you need more than a half hour?
I can probably do it in 15 minutes,
Okay. However
depending on how
much-
many questions we have.
Okay, yeah, however much time, because we have someone, our treasurer's coming, and I told her you'd probably be till 6:30, and then
Okay.
she could take some time at 6:30.
All right,
Okay.
very good. Okay, as Mayor Bingham said, my name is Jeff Morgan. I work for JUB Engineers. I am a registered stormwater inspector, and I am the stormwater official for Hooper City. I am here tonight to talk to you about some updates we have made to the Hooper City Stormwater Management Plan, and to ask you, as a council, to adopt that as, adopt these updates for the city. So real quickly, just a little bit of history about the stormwater program in Hooper City. Back in approximately 2010, the state of Utah, along with the Division of Environmental Quality, federally and in the state, basically started the program of trying to clean up the state's waters, and started the program of this stormwater management program. So each of the cities were then required to put together a plan, and as the city engineer for Hooper City, JUB was tasked with putting that plan together. So we did that back in 2010, started the program here in the city, and since then, the plan has gone through multiple iterations. And I am here to talk about the latest iteration and tell you kind of why we did these updates at the end of 2024. There were a couple of things that needed to happen to the stormwater management plan, and why it needed to be updated. The first was pretty minor. There were some changes in staff. Obviously, Mayor Bingham was newly elected. Brian Jacobs, the city engineer, was no longer with the city. Anyway, so I'm fairly new to being the stormwater official for the city. So we made those changes and got that corrected and updated. The bigger changes came through law that was passed last year by the state of Utah in the legislature. There was a movement kind of driven by contractors and developers to change the way that cities, called MS4s, if you ever hear that term MS4, that means a city or another entity that runs a stormwater program. And the changes in the law, changed how MS4s, and how me particularly as the stormwater official for the city, can inspect and interact with developers and contractors. The rules changed significantly, and as a consequence, we had to change the stormwater management plan to meet those requirements and just to keep us compliant. So that document, the stormwater management plan, I didn't print it and bring it because it's about 500 pages. If anybody cares to look at it, we can pull it up on the screen if anyone would like to see any part of it. But this document that I did bring is probably the most important part of the updates to that plan. So what this document will do, if it's adopted and made part of our plan, it basically kind of lays out the rules of engagement between us as the city and developers and contractors that want to do construction within the limits of the city. They have two choices on what they can do as developers and contractors. They can either do their own inspections and send me information, pictures, and written documentation monthly of the inspections that they've done. And then that's what the law was basically changed to make available. Or they can sign this document saying, we want to keep doing things the way we're doing it, which means that me or whoever else is the stormwater official moving forward can go to their sites and do inspections to make sure that they're compliant, make sure that they're not polluting the stormwater. So as we have pre-construction meetings prior to any development, any construction activity in the city, this document will be provided, and I'll walk through all of this with them. They should know about the law. If not, I will educate them and give them the choice of how they want to move forward handling their stormwater prevention pollution plan for their development, for their construction. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. The other thing that I think I should probably tell you all, and Mayor Bingham knows this, this is very fortuitous that we're here tonight to talk about this, because I just found out yesterday that the Division of Environmental Quality is auditing Hooper City and their stormwater program on February 4th, 5th, and 6th. So getting this adopted is the first big key to making sure that we're in compliance when the state does their audit next month. So there are a lot of other things that we're going to have to put together and try to get our ducks in a row, but making sure the plan is updated and adopted and part of policy here in the city is probably the first big cog in that deal. So so that's kind of it in a nutshell. Any questions that I can answer
How long
for
ago
you?
did this happen? Did this change happen?
The change, so the law was adopted last year in the legislative session of 2024. It just took us a while because of workload at JUB to get around. It took me till the end of the year to have time to actually update the plan. So I didn't anticipate the audit
Well,
coming.
That was my point. I mean,
yeah,
you
it
audit
is. I know.
something that's-
I know, and the timing is good and bad. I get that. If you all wanted to table it and look at it further and not move on it tonight, I understand that. I get that, and we can explain that to the folks with the Division of Environmental Quality when we meet with them. But again, I didn't know the audit was coming. It was just a workload problem, Dale, that we had at JUB to find time to get to it, because like I say, it's 500 pages, and it took me about 20 or 30 hours to update it.
But you've been through it now.
I
and How
have.
comfortable are you with Hooper being compliant?
If this plan is adopted, this part of it, as far as the plan, we will be in compliance. There are some other things that, what I haven't done is looked at the city ordinances now to see how they dovetail with the new plan and to make sure that the other city ordinances that have been in place for a long time fit with this plan. And the state knows that everybody's on this learning curve and that we're trying to figure it out. And I don't think that we're going to get slapped really hard if we're still working on getting some of these things to mesh and to be in agreement. So that's the next step is to look at the ordinances compared to this and see kind of how we are as far as being in compliance.
So the major change to what it was to now is that a contractor can self-regulate or self-manage themselves and then just send you photos.
Correct. Photos and an electronic copy of their inspection report.
Instead of always having an inspector come out.
Correct. Yeah, so then I'll basically do my inspections electronically by looking at their pictures and filling out my own form to see if I feel like they're meeting the requirements of their SWIP, of their plan.
If they elect that, can you still go out and check if you think you need to?
So here are the ways the law allows us to go on site if one of two or three things happens. First is if they tell me when they're given this document that they're going to do the electronic inspections and we don't get that documentation each month, that can trigger an inspection and then we can go. So that's one. The second thing is, if we get any sort of a report, whether it's from city personnel, or sometimes we get calls here at the office from the public saying, hey, you know, I've seen this is a mess, that's a mess, they're dumping this, they're dumping that, and I go look at that. So if we get one of those reports, then that triggers me being able to go on site and to do an inspection as well.
And say if they opt in to have you guys do it, that cost is borne by them, right? Because obviously you're gonna probably charge them to go out and check things, is that correct? Or who bears the cost of this?
As far as I know, I haven't seen anything in the law that allows us to back charge a contractor or a developer for that time for JUB to go do those inspections. Right now, we have a budget set aside each year that covers the stormwater program and our work for you in the stormwater program. And my anticipation would be that it will just continue to come out of that budget.
The city
Now,
budget.
yeah. Now, as we move forward, if we find that a lot of contractors and developers are opting in on this to do the electronic inspections and that they're actually doing it, maybe we can trim that budget number back because it'll take less time for me or whoever is the stormwater official to go through the electronic inspections. But for now, I don't see anything. Right now, it's too early to tell what we're going to be able to do with the budget numbers as far as the stormwater program goes. Just to kind of
So
give
what are
you.
you asking him to do tonight? To adopt the plan?
Yes,
And that's the 500 pages?
correct.
And what changes are made to the plan? We know this is changed.
That's what I was just gonna ask. What else is in there?
Yeah, so basically, changes that reflect what this smaller document says. There are sections in the plan that I updated that brought us into compliance and now match with what we're saying in a brief version here. A lot of it stayed the same. Most of it stayed the same. A lot of it is, it talks about the city, what's it called? The Stormwater Advisory Board, which is Mayor Bingham, myself, Jared Hancock as the Public Works Director, and now Taylor Stauffer as the city engineer. That's the Stormwater Advisory Board and what each of our roles are. Right? Then it talks about how the city goes about managing the public works and the parks and storm drain detention and all of those kind of things. None of that's changed. Everything with what's happening with the city itself is all the same. And so then as we get along just down to the smaller portion, probably about the last, maybe even less than a quarter of the plan, talks about construction and how we handle construction. And that's where I did the majority of the changes.
So you said Taylor Stauffer?
Mhm.
So did you say he's our city engineer or he just is our city?
He's the city,
Contractor.
he's the city engineer. Right, correct?
Contracted through.
Con-
Yeah,
Contractor.
yes, correct,
JUB.
correct.
Okay.
Not an employee of
Not
ours.
employed.
No, yeah, he works in our office as a JV employee. Serves as the city engineer.
So your thought is it's good to have this in place by the time they come in February?
Ideally, yes. Now, I understand that the timing is not great
When
for
in
you
February
guys.
do they come?
It's the fourth, fifth, and sixth. of
That's
February.
why we ended up amending this and putting it on here, because our next meeting's not until the 6th.
Yeah,
So really,
Interesting.
if we could have that approved before they come.
I assume that they can approve it, review it as the council members and mayor. If they find things they want to change, then they change it.
correct,
Is that right?
correct.
It's not something you approve and send to the state and
No,
becomes.
no,
locked in stone.
once we approve it, we will just have your IT people, the only requirement is that we post it on your website so it's publicly available to anybody that wants to see it. So, other amendments or adjustments, are pretty easily done. And if we do that and Mayor Bingham or anyone else wants us to come back and talk about those few changes, we can sure do that and explain it to you guys as well.
A lot of it was so technical. I started, but I didn't make it through all of it, but maybe about the first 200 pages. But a lot of it was so technical that I was relying on Jeff's expertise anyway, because even if I read through it, I don't really know that I have the knowledge to know if what I'm saying. So I trust Jeff. If he's saying that this is what is in compliance, I think it would be.
Yeah, and there's folks a lot smarter than me and know a lot more about stormwater that actually put the plan together and have done the bulk of the heavy lifting. Like I said, I just made these, I guess I shouldn't call them minor changes because it was a big deal to get us and keep us in compliance with the new state law. But yeah, I simply updated what was already done and has been in place for a long time.
More generally, how's the city doing on stormwater?
That is a very good question. So I would say there's two parts of stormwater management that I'm in charge of specifically. The first is the part that specifically is in the city's realm, and that, like I said, that is parks, that is detention ponds, that is where the storm drain system discharges into the sloughs primarily here in the city. And by and large, I inspect those on a very regular basis, and by and large, the city is doing really, really well with their part of it. And so that's really, really good. The other part is the construction side of things, and that's not a city problem, that's a contractor and a developer problem, and I do my part, they don't always do their part, and that's on them, really not on us. So we're doing our inspections and trying to keep them compliant and keep any sort of discharge happening, and so far, the big thing, if you ever hear this phrase called illicit discharge, that means that somebody's dumped something somewhere and it's not good, it's a bad deal. And I've been doing this for a little over a year now, and in the year's time that I've done it, there have been no illicit discharges in any of the storm drain system in Hooper City. There have been a lot of times where contractors and developers have been out of compliance, and I've had to push and crowd them and try to get them back in compliance and get them to clean up and do their thing. The other part where we're a little bit lacking as a city, and I think that we're probably going to have some conversations with the state about this, is we're supposed to be doing education about stormwater to different groups within the city, the public, and then you have commercial. Anyway, there's several different demographics that you're supposed to be doing education for, and kind of help people understand why stormwater pollution prevention is important. There's been some efforts on that side. The Hooper Elementary has been involved in a water fair and has some of the kids go there. We've published a few things and posted them here at the city. But I think that's one place where the city's probably going to find us lacking a little bit, and we're probably going to have to talk as an advisory board about how to improve that and what to do different. But I think generally speaking, I think we're going to probably come out of this audit okay. It's not going to be any fun. I've talked to all my counterparts in different cities that have done it, and it's like having a root canal. You know, it's just excruciating going through it, and they just, and I think they make it painful on purpose, right? I mean, they want to make a point that they're in charge, and they want you to do things the way they're supposed to be done, which is great. But it'll be interesting to see as we go through this process exactly how painful it is. Clinton City went through it. I can't remember I think they had theirs in 2023, and it took them almost a year to get everything sorted out that the state found that was out of compliance. I hope that we're doing a lot better than that, but I guess we'll see once the state comes in and starts looking at what we're doing here. So.
Did they fine Clinton at all?
No.
Okay.
No, they threatened it, but Clinton made it clear that they were taking steps and working hard at trying to get these things sorted out. And I think whatever they find that's out of compliance, I think that'll be the right approach. We'll just assure them and keep them in the loop as we make these changes and try to get ourselves further into compliance with with the feedback they've given us.
Well, and one thing,
Just-
we're not being audited, oh, sorry, Ryan, we're not being audited because we've done anything
No.
wrong.
Correct.
They go through the cities and, you know, and we complete the paperwork. Jeff had mentioned, you know, one of these times it's gonna be Hooper's turn. And
Yes. Yeah.
it's our turn.
Yeah, it is. It's just our turn in the barrel. So a lot of cities are just kind of going through Davis and Weber counties, and our ticket was pulled this time. So, yeah, nothing that we did that was wrong or out of compliance. Just our turn.
Just some ammunition for you, for public, education. We send out a newsletter, 3 or 4 or 5 times a year. And every time that newsletter is published, we have a stormwater section on that newsletter.
Oh,
It
perfect.
says what you can't put in the stormwater, what's acceptable, what's not
Excellent.
acceptable. Just so you know, that
Okay.
we do educate,
Good.
we try to educate the public.
I like that. Okay.
Okay.
Anything
Any
else?
other questions for Jeff? Like we said, we knew this wasn't really good timing to get that and then to be approving it, but the timing just worked out when we were having this audit.
Yeah, I just barely got the email. Just barely got the email yesterday that we were being audited, and I'm like, oh man, that timing's good but not great. So better that we can at least have a chance. So, but again, I understand. I've put you folks in a little bit of a tough position coming when I have, and asking you to consider this tonight. So if, like I say, if you decide you need to table it and do a little bit more research into it, that's understandable, and we'll just deal with that with the state. So,
And I had asked Jeff, it didn't need to be done by resolution, we're just adopting.
correct.
So that's why it could be done tonight.
What, for my information, what's the
Yeah.
difference in those two terms?
Well, a resolution requires a formal written document. A motion just is recorded in the minutes, but it's
Okay.
not a formal document.
Okay.
But that doesn't change the timeline of the audit, whether it's approved tonight or not.
That's correct. They're coming on the 4th, 5th, and 6th of February, no matter what you all decide to do tonight. Yeah,
So have you spoken to Jared? Does Jared know about this?
yes.
What's his feelings on it?
I would say Jared is in the same camp with Mayor Bingham in that we've been doing this as JUB for the city for a very long time. And people much smarter than me have been working on this program for you as a city since its inception, and he has confidence in us doing the best we can to keep the city in compliance. So when he got the notification about the audit, he immediately called me, and we had a very good discussion about what he as the Public Works Director needed to do to make sure that his part of it is up to snuff. So it's important to him, but he does trust us to do the right thing. And the fact that we have not had spills or illicit discharges we've had to deal with I don't know when the last time we had an illicit discharge. I've been with JUB since 2018, and I don't remember anybody talking about an illicit discharge in that time. Do you remember anything when your time, as your time as the mayor? So I think generally speaking, Hooper City, in conjunction with JUB and our work for you, I think we're doing a good job, and I think Jared trusts that.
I think the biggest amount of water that we would be concerned is the state shops over here when they pull their snowplow trucks in.
Yeah,
I mean, so it is the state. We wouldn't have anything
yeah.
to compare with.
Yeah, I inspect every month Jared's shop over here. That's part of my day or monthly inspections, and occasionally there's a few minor things over there that they've got going on. They're very quick to clean up and keep it up to snuff. And yeah, the city generally is doing a very good job with their part of it. So he's taking it serious as the Public Works Director and doing all he can to keep in compliance.
He mentioned a couple of things, like about the shop, about cleaning, probably a little more deeper in the shop. And then today when we were driving down the road down 55, he said, we're gonna have to get a street sweeper and, maybe get from that new construction, get some things done. So
Yeah.
I think think we're going to try to meet probably at the beginning of next week or sometime and see.
Yeah.
Plan that out.
Yeah, so our next step for the audit, just so y'all know kind of how we're going to approach it. So our next step in preparing for the audit is we're gonna meet early next week, in-house at JUB, kind of make a game plan, figure out kind of what we want to present to Mayor Bingham and to Jared. Then we'll get together with them and say, here's how we would like to approach this. Do you guys agree with that? Does that sound like an okay plan? And then we'll move forward with our preparations and hopefully be prepared when February 4th comes to do the best we can with this audit.
Any other
Okay.
questions for Jeff? We appreciate Jeff and all he does for Hooper, so,
Okay.
yes, thank you.
All right. Do you require me to be here for the actual council meeting?
No,
Okay.
no, this will be
Free
good.
to watch the
We have it on the
basketball.
agenda and we'll,
It's gonna be a quick portion.
yeah, it's gonna be really, really quick.
Okay.
Okay, just a couple of things before we have Cami. So the ramp grants, we are submitting those tomorrow. I'd asked Debbie about doing a letter to have city council sign that we could send to the grants.
Thanks.
So Debbie's not able to be here, and so she just asked if I could write up something and send this around, so if you're willing to sign this. So the ramp grants, it was what we voted upon. What we ended up doing a little bit different though with the arts, we had talked about doing the concert, the rodeo, and doing the arts program, all having to do with the centennial celebration. And when I spoke to Shelley over at the Weber County, she said it'd probably be just as effective and maybe work a little better if we lumped all those three together, since it is all one celebration. And so that's what we ended up doing. So you'll see on that letter, there's the three from the parks that we talked about, and then the celebration. So the rodeo, concert, and an arts program are all just in one arts and museum grant. So
Do you have information on the cost of these as far and our
Yep.
commitment?
Yep, I
as a
do.
city?
Yes, so first I can tell you with, and you know what, and the thing about these is if we don't get them, we don't do them, because we're not going to certainly obligate the city. So the Hooper Tomato Day celebration, there's a couple of things on there we talked about doing, and maybe one thing was doing a horse pull. That was one of the very first events they had with Hooper Tomato Days, and a cowboy mounted chute. So this sounds like an outrageous amount, but don't panic, because you add everything together of what we already spent. The amount we are asking for Hooper Tomato Days for the celebration for the ramp is $130,550. And like I say, if we don't get that money, then it's like we've talked about, then you budget and you do with what you can. But there's some things we've talked about we would like to have a little better enhanced celebration this year, because it is the 100th. And so again, if we get that money, then we have some of these increased things. If we don't, then we already have budget money for that. We talked about the Hooper Arena bleacher project. And so one thing, and what we're asking for that is $120,000. And Jared had looked, and so what Jared felt like would be most effective as far as bleachers is getting some portables that we could slide underneath where the covered is. And I think we maybe already talked about that, but they could be used for Tomato Days and for other things. We have some park impact fees that we can use with that. And also there's quite a bit that the city can do as far as removing the bleachers and the hauling away. I forgot to put this total on here for the Hooper North Park. Let me hurry and look up. I didn't get these totals put on here because I was just finishing up these numbers. One thing with the Hooper North Park improvement is we were going to do the, it might take me a minute to find this. We're going, and again, if we don't get it, then we don't do it. But it was in between, I don't know if you've looked out there lately, but they're expanding the shot. That was part of that original. They've been leveling that. They had to take a little bit of a stop because we had a truck that something went out on, so they can't be working on it right this minute. But we talked about doing increasing the parking lot that's in between the shop and where the parking lot is, and then putting the grass around that. So the biggest majority of the cost was actually, and I think it was about possibly $50,000 to do the parking lot and then the sprinklers and all of that. And most of that, the cost for the sprinklers, I think only ended up being about $13,000, and our guys would end up doing the work on that as far as doing the trenching. And I'm sorry, this isn't pulling up. I looked up something else and my Google's shut. And then as far as the power upgrade, I believe it was about $12,000 down at the park, and that was for the electrical wire. The biggest expense is the electrical wire, and then our workers will again do the trenching and do that work for them. But again, and then one thing too is we still have last year's municipal grant where they give, and we still have about $9,500 from that, and we will be getting that additional amount this year. So, everything like it said on there is really gearing towards the
Well,
celebration.
Did you have an amount on the power upgrade?
So I know it's like 12, I think it was like
13.
12,580, something like that, and we just barely added, oh, you know what, okay, let me look real hard.
So do you have our in-kind commitments on each of these?
I do. So as far as the power upgrade, it's $11,000. Well, it's $11,000 we're asking ramp, and $1,315 of that is Hooper Cities. That would be our part. But then you have, we can count our equipment, even though we already own the equipment, if we had to go rent that equipment, and so we can count that. And then as far as us replacing like sprinklers, all of those things, so it ends up looking like a $22,515 project, but $11,515 of that, out of all of that that's Super Cities, there's only $1,315 that would actually be cash, and the rest of it is all kind. So it's counting the cost of our equipment and then, them doing the sprinkler repair if there is any on that. Okay, I can hurry and pull up the other one too, because I found where they were. Let's see, I think the bleacher one I already had, and the other one was the power upgrade, wasn't it?
Parking lot,
Oh, yes,
bleachers,
yep.
and tomato days.
Okay. Yeah, the tomato days, it's just whatever, it's just our existing budget. Hooper Tomato Days always has a budget cameo of somewhere $89,000-$95,000. So we won't be increasing that budget at all. It'll just be, if we get this additional money, that we will enhance those things. Okay, so the parking lot improvements, there is, for that was about $59,718 is what we're asking ramp for. The other $51,000 of that is stuff that we will be doing as far as the grading, like you have to end up repairing the curb and gutter, some of that. There were some sprinkler materials. So as far as the sprinkler materials and we don't have an exact number on this, but the sprinkler materials were $10,100, and that included all of the sprinkler materials and the grass, seed, and we don't know exactly what the Hooper irrigation water connection is going to be. It all depends if they do a 2-inch connection or they do a 4-inch connection, and so we put $5,000 in there just to kind of cover us what we end up seeing back from them. So, but again, if we don't get the grant, we don't do the parking lot. We would have enough in the municipal grant, I think, we could do the grass and the sprinklers.
So for Tomato Days, we budget $83,500.
And then the bleachers, what's our in-kind commitment on those?
And so the bleachers, so again, it looks like a lot, but then by the time you take in everything that we do. So the bleachers ended up being a total cost of $198,900. We have $85,000 right now in our park impact fees that we can use towards that cost for the bleachers. And again, we don't get the grant, we don't buy them. I mean, that's the thing with any of these. The only one I would say that we for sure should do, even if we don't get the grant, because we would have the money in the municipalities, is to get the grass planted out here to protect the finish on our pickleball courts and the power upgrade, because we really do need that for Hooper Tomato Days. It's the fence line behind the bleachers. So it's the east side behind the bleachers, but the very west end of the park that they use. And those two are part of that would be the 10,000 for the sprinklers and the grass seed, and then about another 12, but we have that much in park impact fees, and we have the
So
to
what's the
municipalities.
chances of we getting all of them, and then that's a lot of
You know
money
what?
on our part.
You know,
So,
you don't know, and the only one that had any substantial, and I actually spoke to a private donor today that I think if we need to would donate some money towards these bleachers, but we don't know that yet but I don't know. The only one that had any substantial cost to it at all was the bleachers. They're the only ones, because they're a set price. There's a sole proprietor. There's only one company, Century Industries, that does those. So we're kind of locked into that cost. But again, like I say, if we don't get the grant, then we don't do them. And if we do get the grant and we don't want to use all of our park impact fees, then I go back to this donor who had told me today that he would. They
Yeah,
would give
impact
us-
fees, you just have to increase capacity. So if you're increasing the existing, bleachers capacity to provide something for new services, then you're fine. But if you're replacing bleachers, then you're in a different problem. So the thought that being portable bleachers, I feel like there's more of an argument that, it could increase capacity
Yeah.
to provide events for the public, so.
We figured it would be anywhere between 300 to 500 increased capacity, because they'll extend it'll go a little bit further from east to west. I don't know if you've noticed there's like that pole. But one thing we thought about having them be portable, then we can use them for other events too if we need them, which seem maybe a little more
so
practical.
increasing down at the rodeo grounds, the fire marshal will be okay with that, increasing the capacity. Have you talked to them about?
Yeah, we have plenty of gates.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm just
that's,
asking.
yes, no, that's a really good question.
And
Yeah.
if you're increasing, like if they're portable, then essentially you could take them to a football field and increase your viewers at a football field, or by whatever field you want, is kind of my
So
thought.
excuse me, I have a question. You
Yeah.
had asked me also to write about the landscaping for the pickleball court and
Uh-huh.
basketball court. So do you have that paperwork
Yeah,
as well?
Yeah, Debbie, it was all included in there. The one letter just included all of the grants. Is that what you mean, that letter?
Yeah.
Yes,
For
it did.
the landscaping for that.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, it included
Alright.
every bit of it. Mm-hmm,
All right, thank you.
yep. Okay,
Before we get to the finances, just again, look at this disclosure statement. The one that you have that has the city logo on has to be on the city website at the end of the month. So make sure you get that to Morgan. How soon do you need it to get it on the website? Sooner the better. Yeah. You received two before that. One was a list of all of the conflict of interest provisions in state law and city ordinance. And hopefully you've signed that little document that you've gone through it and understand it. If in that review you found things that you thought you needed to disclose, we also gave you a form to do that with. That was 2 months ago. But this is the one that has to be on the website, and that really needs to be.
No notary, right? No.
okay,
Okay, I'll pass these around. This is actually the audit report. And Kurt will be on Zoom to present it. Let's see.
So you need to save it for the others.
Yeah, and I have 10, so there should be
okay,
plenty.
thank you.
So,
I'll take Debbie's, and I can do
okay,
it.
you're good. And like I said, I've got a few extras, so.
For review, you can have it back.
Oh, come on, you don't want
Well,
some,
I don't think I'll take it home for
some,
night reading.
night reading. That's as interesting as law.
Not to me.
Or IRS code.
It is as interesting as that.
So, okay, so the first letter, I'm sure he'll go over it in a lot of detail, so I won't spend a lot of time on the audit report, because I don't want to make you listen double. But we did not have any findings this year. The only finding that is showing is the prior year finding, which they always repeat those. And in last year, we were over our fund balance in our general fund, and we fixed that this year, so we're good. It's resolved. So but everything went well. We were able to provide them all the information. And like I said, I'm sure he'll go through more of the detail. But probably the MD&A is the most understandable part, which is pages 4 through page 9. And that kind of compares and tells you kind of how we're doing. Our net position did increase by about 11.9%, which is good for your governmental funds, or government-wide. Governmental funds, we increased by 19.65% over the prior year, which is, of course, what we like to see, that we're trending in a positive direction. Maybe I'll just kind of jump to the general fund and highlight a few things I know that we've discussed throughout. So if you want to jump, like I said, I don't want to repeat what he's going to say, and I don't know what he's going to say, so I won't spend a lot of time on these ones. Jump back to page 43. And on 43, you'll see that we budgeted $315 for the utility tax. We brought in $311, so we were right where we thought we were going to be. So with that final number, overall, with what we budgeted as opposed to what we brought in, we were about $10,000 short. That's pretty dang good. That's a close budget. So we did pretty good there. And then if you look on page 44, you can see each of the departments where we ended up with budget on each of them. General fund, there was an over budget of 93. Public safety was over by 89. Recreation 42. Highway 597. Parks 162. Community development, that was over by 10,000. So we did pretty good with our budgeting. I like to budget a little bit tighter than what has been done in the past. So our budget meetings will probably have a little bit different feel this year, hopefully. But not saying there's a right way or a wrong way. That's just, I like to kind of have things a little bit less surplus and have it a little bit tighter as to where we're spending things.
So what are you saying there? Are you saying spend more money, or are you saying
No, I'm saying
collect less revenue?
I'm saying that I more so, instead of in your streets of having an excess of 597,000, you won't see that when I'm doing budget.
And where's it going to go?
It's going to go to capital projects where it should be. So those projects that money should be budgeted, and I think
So
there was some intentions that it should have been budgeted there, but it wasn't necessarily.
So year after year after year, we have the same exact problem, as you probably know.
Yes.
And the reason it's that way is because we don't spend the money.
Well, and it's more so because Teresa would budget for the Class C and stuff in this fund, whereas it really should be budgeted in your capital projects fund.
Road project or a capital project?
They can be. Absolutely. So if you look over at page 14, you're going to see that your highway and public improvements expenses were $2,852,000. So I think it'll just be a different thought process.
That's the fund balance is 2.8.
No, that's what your expenditures were. Your total fund balance was 3.5 down at the very
But
bottom of that page.
that's including the 5,500 project.
Yes, that's after the year end.
So a normal year would be what? How much did the 5,500 project end up being?
I'd have to add all the years together because it's been lapsing over a couple of years. So I don't have that answer right now, but I can certainly get it for you. And I'm
So I mean, I go back to the other document you gave us, which ends December 31st.
Yeah,
In between
Should we jump
Class C
to that?
road balance and the fund balance on local highway option, we've got like $2.3 million sitting there, correct?
correct. Yeah, and we certainly can budget to, when it comes budget time, let's talk about what we're gonna do with that.
Well, no, never mind, I won't go there right now.
Well, I can give you a little update on that. So we have a road supervisor now, and Jared mentioned this week that him and Cody are going to start. He said it's a kind of a tedious process, but they go road by road and make a list of what needs to be done. He's aware there's that many, and he said it sounds like a lot of money, but $2 million for road projects go really pretty quickly. But they are going to do that.
Yeah,
He
so
mentioned that.
we've requested,
Mhm.
Jared particularly, but all department heads, to come up with a list of what is your priority as far as what roads need done, what about is the cost that you're looking at, what about equipment, are some of our trucks, 1960s that we need to replace, do we need to look at that? And so we want to build, eventually having a 5-year asset, plan as to what our capital projects are going to be for like a 5-year span. Now, granted, that takes time to build that, and it's a very fluid document. So right now, I've kind of approached it as more, okay, Jared, can you get us maybe a priority list, and let's look at maybe trying to make a 3-year, ideal, what we need to do. And then, okay, from there, let's build onto that and eventually come up with a 5-year asset replacement, or not asset replacement, but capital project list of, we'd like to see these roads done over the next 5 years. Does that mean that's when they have to be done? No. If, we have 5,100 as needing on that year, but then all of a sudden 4,600 falls apart, we're gonna bump them. It's a very fluid document, but it at least gives us a planning. And so we've asked him to start compiling that so that we can start that with budget process, and we'll start those budget discussions very soon. So I'll just jump over to the financials since we already kind of jumped to those. Overall, as of December 31st, so halfway through the year, our revenues to date are at 50%, so we're right on target. Our expenditures are at 34%. It looks like we're right on track with that utility franchise tax. I know there's been some discussion about that, and it looks like we're right on track to be about what we budgeted on that. A couple of the departments are a little bit over their 50%, but some of them are seasonal, such as recreation. Recreation often is, as you know, more expensive during the summer, and then it dies down a little bit during the winter. So we'll continue to watch that. We have 947 in restricted funds for Class C roads, and then we have 1.3 for local highway option that is also restricted. We had that 165 of unspent ARPA money, but we did transfer that over to the stormwater department to help with that commitment coming forward with the stormwater department, as we discussed, and that fulfills the need to have that committed by the December deadline that we were up against. Right now, the fund balance in the general fund is at 32%. That, very much can adjust as we see expenses go up, or we'll monitor that really closely, but we usually like to see it around 25%. That's our ideal to see. So we may adjust some of the transfer over to capital projects if needs be, but as of right now, we're sitting in a pretty good spot to stay compliant with that law. Tomato days, I think we went over last time, just kind of where we're at with that. But a big portion of that is we need that ramp grant to do the same projects as we've had in the past, but I think with tomato days, we're gonna look at that a little bit closer this next year and budget that a little bit differently maybe. And then the utility, we did break that out, so now we have our sewer, our garbage, and our stormwater at each of their own departments. You'll see sewer did collect 51% of what was budgeted, and expenditures are at 42.7%. We did have the 52 of ARPA money that we were waiting, that we needed to have committed, and we have committed that for the additional pumps. The garbage fund, we collected 50.8%. Your expenses are only at 38.7%. Some of that is because we've got some bills that still have not lined up. They're coming in a month later, so I suspect that will be right about on budget. So, and then our stormwater, we're at 50.8, so we're right on budget. And again, stormwater doesn't spend a whole lot, so we only have 9% of the expenses that were budgeted.
So same question on that category. Year after year after year, we spend hardly any money in stormwater. It looks like we have a balance of $860,000 in stormwater. That's 5 years worth of stormwater budget.
Very good. Yep.
So can we do something else with that money? Can we put that in capital projects? Or does it just keep accumulating until we spend it on something?
That accumulates, but some of Jared's projects that we've discussed are going to be stormwater for budget. And they are ones that are not going to keep waiting, unfortunately. And then, of course, you're going through a stormwater audit, a SWIP audit, and you're going to probably see some expenditures there, I would suspect.
The audit costs us money.
No,
No, what we
but
have
they're
to
going to
do
tell
to
you what
comply.
you have to change.
Requirements.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned or not, we had applied for that $600,000 grant, and we did not
Yeah.
get it.
For the 59 project.
Yeah, we didn't
Have we
get
talked
it.
to that contractor? Is he still on board?
Yeah, they went and talked to the contractor, but I know they're going through some pricing, and I haven't seen those final numbers. I don't know. but-
With that project, could that 800,000, could some of that be applied to that? I mean, it's just,
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. Yep. I think I would not jump too quickly about being over having that fund balance in there. I think you're gonna find that's gonna go pretty quick with the new SWIP requirements. I'm pretty familiar with those. So,
So that was my question, is can it just accumulate, or do you have to do something with it? Is it
No.
a percentage-based fund?
that one is not required to have a cap or anything like that. Yeah, that can accumulate just for the stormwater. And when we broke those three funds out, what we tried to do is go back and say, okay, based upon the information that we have, how can we take that fund balance that was in the main utility fund and allocate it out the best way we can. And so that is, in the past, we have not known what was in there. So now we do know what is in that stormwater and what projects that actually needs to be spent on. And it won't go very far towards a project, unfortunately.
The cemetery project qualifies for that,
Sorry about that.
right?
The road that's
The road.
deteriorating, yeah, I think it would.
For stormwater, for cemetery?
Okay, under the road is 6,300,
Oh,
there's a
yes.
pipe that goes
Yes,
underneath.
yes, we did
That's-
talk about that.
that's
That's one of them.
completely
Yeah. That's one of the
rotted.
things that Jared's working on. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
4,600. Jared had that list of 13 projects that he said would be 4,600's one of them. Yeah.
I have a question, Cammie.
Uh-huh.
So it says in Zion's Bank, Bank of Utah, on our checking, we have 1.5 million. How does insurance, like the FDIC insurance, how do we navigate that? Is that over the limit, or is it broken up in several different accounts so we're protected, or?
No, that's a very good question. So yes, that technically is over the limit. They still just have the $250,000 limit, which is super hard. Some of this is because of timing that we did get a big chunk in. We got a $500,000 from the 500 project. And so all of a sudden we got this big money in. Typically we try and keep more money into the PTIF. The PTIF is also risk-based. It is mostly, Utah's PTIF is mostly in corporate bonds, which is also a risk. The only way you can really get out of risks if you put $250 in each little bank, which is super hard to manage that. So yeah, we're a little bit maybe higher than I'd like to see on that cash balance at the moment, or at this point in time. However, you're gonna be over the limit there.
Sure.
Um,
Just kinda-
Yeah, and the PTIF, I did mention that it's corporate bonds, most of it in Utah. However, if the PTIF does fail, which I say PTIF, maybe some people don't know what that is. It's the state fund, the state manages that and it's their investment fund. But if the PTIF does fail, the good thing about that is, say one corporate bond goes bad, everybody's share of it is invested into the PTIF. So it is a little bit more secure. And there's various things that we can look at as far as, if there's some money that we're not going to use, then maybe we look at investing it into some CDs. But typically we just do like perpetual care type things into CDs. More so the PTIF would, manage more of the money. Like I said, 500 was a big deposit all of a sudden that we got just close to the end of the year. And so really, $1 million operating fund is really about what I would like to see. So, because we do have that money going in and out often enough. And then we can always transfer money from PTIF over to the bank, so Bank of Utah.
The only other question I had on the general fund, I think it was page miscellaneous, there was an other category.
Yeah.
That was over like 3,800%. So
Yeah, and
what was that?
that is a reimbursement check that we got. And what we've done, and that has since been cleared out, but what we have is this other category. So the girls, when they receive things in, they get money in for various things, not only utilities, but maybe like a reimbursement or a grant or something, and they don't have the ability to code it to the right spot. So I've created an account called Other, and then I go through and I say, okay guys, what was this for? And we put it in the right spot. So it's a way for us to communicate. So, but it has since been cleared out, yeah. So, very good questions.
Okay, any other questions for Cammy before we move up? We have to switch gears
Yes,
here
but
a
I'll
little
ask you
bit,
later.
so it's always,
What's that?
oh, did you have another one?
Well,
Bryce?
just a big question mark. It's like,
Oh,
you have to explain that one to me. It's like,
we
we
legally
didn't-
have to provide that,
Yeah.
basically. It's basically saying that, yeah, it's one of those legal things,
Okay.
yeah. So, and if you guys have questions, feel free to email me or call me anytime, so. Sorry, I'm gonna leave this with you before I forget to give it to you. You just have to sign that, you and me.
Oh,
and
okay.
do it to the state.
Tonight?
Yeah, I don't know if you wanna sign it tonight or if you want.
You want me just to sign it right now?
It's totally up to you.
Okay.
I'm great with that, and then I'll get it on first thing in the morning.
like
So.
some training.
Oh, yeah,
Did you
just
see
your training?
Yeah.
There were some things, I don't know, too, maybe that we needed you to sign from the bank.
Oh, I signed the stuff for the bank.
Oh, you said
Yeah,
sign it?
I yesterday and signed it. So,
Okay.
I'm gonna give these extras of the audit report tomorrow, so if you
Yes,
guys
yes,
want.
I got Debbie's, and
Okay, and then I'll put it on the state auditor website first thing in the morning, okay? So,
Turn it in. Give it out here.
you're fine. I'm just having this.
it's 8 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and start. We welcome you to Hooper City City Council meeting. Is it not quite?
7.
Or, sorry, 7. I just put me up a little bit. I'm not that tall and I shrink. 7 o'clock. I am Sherry Bingham and I'm Mayor, and we want to welcome you here with us tonight. And we want to excuse Debbie Maragoni and Lisa Northrup that are actually joining us on Zoom tonight. So we are going to go ahead. I will give the Pledge of Allegiance, and then the reverence will be given by Councilmember Bowers. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Heavenly Father, we're always grateful to come before Thee in prayer and give thanks unto Thee for the care and keeping and watchful eye that Thou hast provided for each of us throughout each day and throughout our lives. We're grateful to be here tonight, grateful to meet here in this council meeting, and we always pray that Thy influences will be upon us to help us to do those things that are right and good and best for the people we are surrounded with. We are grateful to live in an area that has been such a good place for us to live and to raise our families in and to provide the necessary things, those good things that help us to be good neighbors and friends. Again, we are grateful for these blessings, especially to live in a country that provides these types of freedoms, and we pray that we'll never take them for granted. And this we say in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Okay, just one announcement before we get started. I want to let you know that Jessica Smith is going to be one of our youth council advisors. So we appreciate her being willing to serve. There's quite a bit that our youth council does, and we really appreciate everything that they do with that. So we will go ahead and start with our consent items. Has everyone had a chance to look through the minutes? Is there any questions, concerns, changes on the minutes? Okay, if not, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes dated January 2nd, 2025.
I'll make a motion that we approve those minutes as stated.
Okay, that motion was made by Councilmember Bowers. Is there a second? Second was made by Councilmember Hill. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did we hear two ayes on that? Okay. Okay, so tonight we have some reports and some presentation. Our first one's going to be the 2024 fiscal year audit presentation by Kurt Gilbert.
Can you, excuse me one minute, I apologize, I thought you were doing upcoming events. I would like to make a suggestion, motion, whatever, number 8, discussion item, you have down as the planning commission. That was actually supposed to be listed under number 7 as an action item per the city council's request. So I would like that to be moved up before we move on. That's not a discussion item, that was miswritten.
Okay, yeah, that's something we'll be discussing because
Yeah,
it needs to have a public hearing. That's the reason it was a
Well, that's
discussion.
what we can discuss, because it
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah, so we can go ahead, and it can just be right underneath then, because that's what it is.
So we'll put it under number 7D instead of 8.
Okay.
You okay to do that?
You discuss it whenever you want.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Fair enough.
so we'll go ahead, we have the auditor is on the Zoom, is he?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and turn the time over to him.
We can't hear you,
Kurt, you're muted.
Oh, but there we go. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah, hold on. Give us a second here.
Okay.
I got you a little loud.
You don't want that. You don't want to hear me more than you have to. Let me know when you're okay.
I think we're set. You're good.
Okay, well, awesome. Well, first of all, thank you for accommodating this. Let me jump on Zoom. I wish we could be up there in person, just scheduling things today. We really appreciate you being flexible and allowing us to do this. Second of all, just want to thank you as well for the opportunity to work with your city. Morgan did an awesome job jumping in this year into a new role, and she did a great job facilitating and helping us with our audit work, gathering documents, and everything that we were asking for there, as well as Cammie. She always does a great job helping her city and providing the necessary information we need to do our work. So first and foremost, thank you to everyone involved. We really appreciate that. With that in mind, though, I've always heard the difference between an attorney and an accountant is that at least an accountant knows that they're boring. So I'll try to be brief tonight and kind of give you a high-level overview of what we do as auditors, our purpose, kind of the steps we take during our audit, and then kind of give you a bird's eye view of what's in the audited financial statements, run through that briefly, and then obviously if you have any questions for me, would be more than happy to answer those. So with that in mind, our purpose or goal as an auditor really is to form an opinion on two main things. The first being on the financial statements themselves, so to form an opinion on whether the numbers are materially accurate within your financial statements, and then two, on your compliance with state requirements that the state requires you to comply with. And so, not to skip too much ahead, but kind of the punchline of it all is that the city received the highest remarks you can receive in an audit, and that's called an unmodified opinion. So you'll see that as we go through the reports here, but did receive the highest opinion you can receive in both those regards. So in addition to that, we also look at the city's internal controls and evaluate those. But in order to form an opinion on all those items, obviously we do a ton of different test work. So we do, some examples of some tests. We confirm account balances with banks to make sure the appropriate balances show for your debt, for your cash accounts, for your investment accounts. We review a number of different invoices and documentation to, make sure your capital asset purchases are recorded appropriately, your expenditure, your accounts payable. We recalculate your revenue, confirm those balances with the state to make sure the proper sales tax amounts, property tax amounts are all recorded appropriately, do some analytical review. Anyways, the list goes on and on, but we do quite a bit of testing, and that all boils down to, what our result and our opinion of the financial statements. And like I said, the city received an unmodified opinion on financial statements and on their compliance with state requirements as well. So with that, I'll kind of pull up, if it's okay, I can share my screen with you, if that works. Let me pull this up here and I can show you the financial statements.
You should be able to share. Let me know if not.
Yeah, I think I've got them up. So, okay, let me know if that's big enough or not big enough for everyone to see.
It's tiny.
It's tiny. Okay, we'll zoom in a little bit. So, like I said, up front here at the
The
beginning of the
council
audit.
has a copy of all of them, and then I'll post them on the state website first thing in the morning.
Okay,
Just
okay.
FYI.
So the council has a copy, that's perfect. So, these first 3 pages is basically our letter to management explaining kind of what I just explained, what we did during our audit, whether there were any findings or different things like that, how we interacted with management. Again, no major or no findings at all this year, nothing of note. The financials looked great, state compliance, everything was in line there as well. So that's what these first 3 pages here illustrate. And then you kind of jump into the financial statements themselves, skip through the table of contents here. And again, I'll move fairly quickly through this, try not to bore you, but highlight some of the important parts here. So this first part is probably, from an auditor's perspective, the most important part of it. This is our independent auditor's report. We go through, you can note this is the opinion I discussed, that the city received an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. We talk about our basis for that opinion, the responsibilities of the city and management of the city, what our responsibilities were, what we did to form that opinion, and everything in this letter here. But then, if there's anything I would recommend, I mean, this is a big 62-page document, right? So if you want some light reading at night, you're welcome to read all of it. But if you want a good bird's eye view of everything behind this, I would go and read this management discussion and analysis, or MD&A. This is the high-level overview, highlights different aspects of the city and the financial performance for the year. So I would definitely recommend going and reviewing this. Talks about revenues, expenses, assets, cash, and investments that you have, the liabilities that you have. Gives some brief detail on whether those increased from the prior year or decreased. Different items like that kind of give you more narrative to the financial statements behind these. So this is a really good resource for you to jump into. Again, the MD&A here gives you some budgetary highlights. You can see general fund expenditures were almost $1 million less than budgeted, which is great. Capital asset summary, some of the significant additions that were taken. There were some significant additions of capital assets this year. And then in addition to long-term debt. So those few pages there are really a good resource to you to even fall back on to review the financial performance of the city last year. Because once you go past that, it gets really into the weeds and you start getting into that boring accounting language that I was talking about before. So this is basically the in-depth version of everything you just saw in the MD&A. You see a more detailed breakdown of the different assets of the city, both in the governmental activities and the business type activities. I'll kind of skip through some of these fairly quickly and highlight one that most board members appreciate a little bit more, and it's this statement right here, the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. So this basically is your inflows and outflows for the year. Specifically for your governmental funds, not the proprietary or business type funds. So in your general and capital projects fund, you can see total revenues were almost 7.2 million. Total expenditures were about 6, including some other expenditures that are other irregular, infrequent items. So the net change in fund balance this year, you can see in the bottom right here, was about $1.1 million, leaving you with a net fund balance in your governmental funds at the end of the year of about 6.6. So always good to be on that end of the side of the coin. So again, more financial statements, more detail than what the MD&A gave before, right here. And then after these statements, you get into what are called the notes of the financial statements, which give even more detail to the detail that you just saw. So it talks about the entity as a whole, talks about the genesis of Hooper City, kind of the accounting practices of the city, how you recognize revenue, expenditures. All of that is in this detail of the notes, and that's several pages. I'll highlight just a couple of notes that I think are of interest. One here is the note on capital assets, right here. So you can see within the capital assets, this kind of explains what assets you had in the beginning and ending and change. So you can see the city spent in the governmental activities about $3.7 million on capital improvements last year, mainly in infrastructure, the 5500 West project, and then about $200,000 in your business type activities as well. In addition to that, the long-term debt footnote is always of interest. Obviously, your biggest liability you can see here is your bond that's outstanding. No interest bond, which in this day and age is quite remarkable. And you can see you paid off $425,000 of that. You can see all future debt service payments right here in this footnote as well, to see how long that note is outstanding. So again, just a lot of detail here in these notes. If you ever want more than what the MD&A is providing, you can go back to these resources and see. This is a big old footnote on the retirement plan the city has. But I'll jump through these onto what's called the required supplementary information. This is basically more detail to the detail to the detail, so on and so on. So this provides just more informational reports, budget to actual comparisons in the general fund. Again, we mentioned some of those highlights in the MD&A already of total revenues and expenditures. And then there's some other information called supplementary information on more detail to the retirement system, the pension plan that the city has. So once you get through all that, you get to our two final reports. Again, we have one up above, and then this one is kind of our review of your internal controls. Again, we look and evaluate those in order to form our opinion. Nothing of major note there that we found. And then our report on state compliance. So you can see here in our report the items that we looked at for state compliance are listed right here. One's budgetary compliance, fund balance, fraud risk assessment, and so on. These are the items that specifically the state required us to look at for governmental entities this year. Again, no findings at all this year. Everything looked great. So that's obviously, like I said, really brief, high-level overview of the financial statements themselves. Again, Cammie, Morgan, everyone involved in the accounting team did a fantastic job, and we really appreciate the opportunity to work with you. So with that in mind, I know I moved fairly quickly. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Any questions from the council? No? Okay, I don't think they have any cameos or anything you would like to add to any of that? Okay, well, thank you.
I apologize. It might be a little light on my end if someone was mentioning something, the volume.
There was no questions.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you do have any questions after the fact.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So ma'am, we just need to approve, accept the audit. The council has to accept the audit.
Okay, so do we just make that as a motion? So if someone would like to make a motion to accept the audit. Cammie just told us that, but we just need to make a motion to accept the audit.
So is that 5A, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
So evidently we can motion on something that's not motion on there, is that correct? So I'll motion that we accept the audit for instruction for the audit presentation by Kurt Gilbert.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Councilmember Wilcox, seconded by Councilmember Hill. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Yes, that was my mistake. I didn't know we need to have that as a motion.
It's something that's often overlooked, so
Okay.
that's why I always make sure I throw it in, because we do have to accept the audit, so.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I'm the next thing, so B. So we went over the monthly financial statements for December 31st, 2024 in our work session. So I won't go over it again, just for sake of boring everybody, like Kurt said. But basically just want to note that you've been provided that, and if you have any questions, you're of course always welcome to reach out to me. So.
Okay, does anyone have any additional questions for Cami? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, now we have a presentation from Dave Harris, who is our Emergency Preparedness Director.
Oh, I've been elevated.
I didn't remember
Don't
what
get
you're
talking.
talking.
We need to connect you in, Dave.
Or can you do it from there? Or do I need to plug in this
We can
one?
do it from
Hey
here.
Gabby, can you hear me?
Yes.
You got a PowerPoint
Do I need to plug in the HDMI here or over?
over here?
Oh,
I can handle it for you, see where.
no, I need to, can I plug it in here?
No, you can't.
That's what I always do.
They won't be able to see.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, let me-
You want to?
let
It
me,
won't work.
let me do this, at least for the first part, I'll just operate over there.
Okay, we can make it over here.
Malcolm, could he take the cordless mic over there and do it from there?
It's fine with you.
Yeah, just bring the mic, Dave, if you'd sooner do it from that table.
Actually, you know what? Let me just, I don't need it.
Are you sure? They can get it up.
I'm sure. I'm gonna, go ahead. I just need that on the screen.
This on the screen?
Yep. So just by way of introduction, about a little over a year ago, I was asked to,
Get your microphone and the point, the clicker.
no, I don't need to, I'm not gonna point anything on the screen. So I was asked about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, take responsibility,
Dave, you just need to go into the mic, or people that are watching online
Oh.
can't hear it.
then I need the portable.
That one's portable.
Just
So you
pull it
can
out of
take-
here.
Yeah, you can take it off.
I was thinking I was just talking to the ones here. So, about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, I was asked to take responsibility for Hooper City's emergency preparedness. And I was told that it would just take 4 hours a month. So I thought I'd just do a quick overview of the year. So if you have, I'm just going to go through it quick. So if you have any questions, just pay attention, and at the end you can ask me the questions. So this is the agendas that we have for the year, and hopefully if you see something there that catches your attention, you can ask me at the end when we're through. Okay, I'm not going to go all through it. So we actually have made a great deal of progress. We had kind of a rough start just because of understanding can I use the mouse here?
So, let me just start with, every one of our, I want, while they're looking at that, just recognize Casey Crandall, Casey, and Jake and Amber. They're on the Hooper team. And I'll explain what Casey does, and Amber and Jake take minutes, keep track of the stuff that we put up on the shared drive. Not even a chuckle? Nobody even, wow. Thank you. So this was, thank you. This was our very first agenda. Not that it's significant today, but you can see our ambition when we started was to incorporate FEMA's incident control or command system, which is pretty involved. There's some training online, so we launched into this thinking that we could do this, but it's really way out of the scope of Hooper City, so we ended up with those three positions. And Casey is logistics, Jenny Stanger is planning, or she's the admin, sorry, Casey's the planning and logistics. So if there's an issue, an incident in the city, and it turned into citywide, this will become the command center. And then the three of us would be responsible to orchestrate our response as a city to those needs. So it's a pretty daunting task, but we have really, I think, improved what we try to do in our monthly meetings, which is every third Wednesday of the month at 6:30 here. So this is our agenda last night. And the reason I show you that is you can see there's a little bit of a difference from that first one and what when we found out we had a lot of attendance at the first, but it faded off rapidly. So we split the meeting where we talk about, and I'll mention these in a minute, we talk about those things that are kind of the city plan, and then the second half of the meeting is something for families on emergency preparedness. It could be spent 3 months on 72-hour kits, long-term storage, etc. But I'm going to hit these a little bit. So CERT, and you can see we don't have, sorry for those that are listening and can't see me pointing. Maybe I do need that pointer.
We can give it a shot. You want to plug in your system and take some slides and you go. And then
So,
down there.
CERT, anybody here other than those that have been in the meeting know what CERT stands for? What's that? Oh. So we have in Hooper City, we have 4 that are certified CERT. Casey and I happen to be one. This right here, can they see me if I'm over here, or if they need to see it?
Yeah, they can see it at the table.
So this is, after they're trained, this is the CERT kit. And what CERT is if there's a issue, or I would say issue, an incident, that there's CERT people that go out and assess, they've been trained to go out and assess primarily the health and welfare of people in the city. So they go out, there's a number of things that you do to determine and categorize the issue or the severity, and then when emergency shows up, if they do, then we already know that. We can say you've got to go to this location, this location. If someone is life is on the line, of course that's where the effort or the direction is going to go.
That down there working for you. Let's try to support it. Sure.
Oh, there we go.
I want to give you a laser.
So, marketing, they probably can't see that. Huh? So what I mean by marketing is, and I will mention it again, and I'm going to look up here, is we need exposure. People need to know in the city what we're trying to do so that they can be involved, because if we're prepared, even a little bit prepared, we're better off than we were the day before. So that's really emergency preparedness. That's what we're trying to do. So we need to get exposure. And you know, the website, there is a tab for emergency preparedness, but all there is that one little letter that went out. We just need to, and maybe there's a way that we, from the emergency preparedness team, can update the website with that information, that we have the ability to do that. I don't know what the answer is to that. But that's a big need for us. We don't have an emergency plan yet. But that's, and I'll show you something that's, we're starting in it, but we need to get that. Because the ambition is that when I'm no longer in this role, that for a couple of hours I can hand off, maybe 3 hours, I can hand off a booklet, and whoever is there can pick it up and away we go. That it doesn't do the ebb and flow that emergency preparedness does everywhere, including Hooper. That there is a sustainability. So we need that plan. We have some effort into that so far. VOAD is a voluntary organization ecclesiastically, so churches, it is churches that have specialties. Like Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is hygiene kits. I think the Baptists are shelter. Other than some helping with insurance needs, how to navigate that process. So there are different religions that have a specialty, and that we call up and say, we, Hooper City, call up and say, we need your help. We've had an issue, and we need these kind of resources to come in, and they come in as a volunteer organization.
Is that clicker working for you yet? Did you click that banner? No, sorry about that. That's not working on here.
I wasn't even planning on that. What we did is we divided the city into 17 areas, and then 4 quadrants, and each area has an area coordinator, and we don't have all of those yet. We have about half of them, and we originally just tried to make our own, and one of our mantras is if we can plagiarize it from somewhere else, something else, then that's what we're going to do. So what we ended up doing is doing ward boundaries, because it should be a fair representation of population, assuming that the ratio between member and non-member is the same roughly. Anyway, it's a whole lot easier than trying to map out the city, because we did try that. Casey can attest to that. Anyway, so this is where we are. So there are those 17 areas, every area to have an area coordinator. But then if an issue or an incident happens, it can be confined to just that particular area. It can be multiple areas. It could be the entire city, and how we respond to that. So RDAP, which is, RDAP is got introduced it last September, and it stands for Rapid Disaster Assessment Plan or Program. But if you're familiar with block captains, and you know how difficult that is, and how it doesn't work a lot of times. People move, whoever's in charge of it doesn't have a passion for it, and it just doesn't happen. So this was developed, I think, maybe Summit County, I don't remember. But then Weber County was introduced to it like in August. Then I attend a county meeting once a month, and they introduced it to us, and we picked up on it. So it is, and just in a nutshell, if you don't have, the great thing about it is if you don't have to, how much time do I have? Somebody just say.
2 minutes.
Reed's got a basket. He's got a basket.
So I'm not going to abide by that one. Because to me,
You asked.
I just expected a legitimate answer. To me, this is important for us as a city to be prepared, because we didn't have anything. So this, if you show up, you're the first person right inside this box. It tells you the first person. You grab the first person envelope or the folder. Inside there's a little instruction that tells you what you do. Then, in a nutshell, you're the first person that shows up, and 2 other people come in, and you say, will you go out to Section 8 and check every house and make sure, assess what's wrong. You document that and bring it back. Because we're really looking at this from the perspective of we're on our own. There isn't going to be, fire's not going to show up, emergency, any kind of emergency service is not gonna show up. Yeah, every area has one of these boxes. Thank you. And it is readily accessible by anybody. Our ambition is to get that word out there that at least you know that it's there and roughly what it is. And that's really, the more we get from that, the better off we are, but that may not happen. But at least if you know, you can come, I'm gonna grab that folder and it's gonna tell me what to do. And we start assessing and keeping track of that. So if emergency does come or when they do come, you can say, here's what we know, here's the issues that we have, and then we're attending to the things that are most important. So I think I said everything on there. So this is kind of the beginning of our trying to illustrate what our plan is. So we talked about CERT, we talked about RDAP, and it is first and foremost, first responsibility is individual and family. You got to make sure things are okay at home before we go up, and then turns community, churches, organizations. But our emergency response stands on these two pillars. That CERT is going to be looking for, and optimally, if we had the ability when there's an incident, that we go out with a CERT person and an RDAP and assess the damage and the well-being of the citizens of the community. So this really is just trying to illustrate communication. Things go up. If it's the bigger the issue, the further it comes up to. If it's a citywide issue, then it's to the command center here at the city. If it's just area, then it stops at the area. So, on February 19th, we have a mock exercise for the RDAP only. We're not going to try to test all of the things that we do in a mock exercise with having people that are injured. We're just going to test the system and find out all of the bugs that are in there, because there will be. There isn't anybody else for us to copy right now, because it isn't being used in Weaver County at all. It's introduced, but I don't know how many are. I'm not really aware of anybody that's progressing with it. So we don't have anybody. So actually the Battalion Chief for Ogden City for Emergency Preparedness is going to help develop it and then execute that exercise here. We met last night. We're going to try for 3 scenarios that we can go through in an hour and a half and test it, just the RDAP portion. So I wanted to show you this. These are our, last night we talked about long-term storage in the second half of that meeting. And then you can see RDAP mock exercise, which I just talked about, long-term storage, ham operator, and Casey's a ham operator. The subjects, our desire is to get people involved. That there's things there that will interest them, that they'll come, and we become better prepared. So what we need, and I said this already, is we need, I'm going to look up here again, we need exposure. We need to have this way, if we have access to that webpage, that we can update things. Right now, Casey and Emmer put things out on a shared drive, where you can go look. It's just, you don't know about it. What? Am I out of time?
You're good.
Oh, he knows. They both know. Thanks for pointing that out there in public. So we're on the city page, like I mentioned, but there's not enough there. We need a cache or medical equipment, which is, Bryce and I have talked about it, it's probably the best thing is a trailer. And it has, it's not first aid kits, it's like boards and things that are larger, that they can be taken to an area if there's a big enough incident that can't be handled from that local resources. And then the webpage, or I was thinking of a webpage, but better access on the webpage. Questions? So we actually have made a lot of progress. It looks like it, isn't it? We started out with no idea how to start. We just started with what we thought was the right thing to do, and I've learned a great deal.
You could use social media. Opera does have a Facebook page, so that would be something that you guys could access as far as posting stuff on your own. So
if you went back a few slides, one of the things we're looking for is somebody, keep going, right there, that marketing, is that We need somebody to kind of pick that up and be the driving for that, to do that thing, Facebook or whatever the 150 different, not just social media, but whatever kinds of things we can do to make that visible. So when we have that mock exercise, we want to invite everybody we come to, maybe just to observe. Anything else? Thank you.
I have a question for Bryce, maybe. All the information you talk about every month, like the schedule you had up there, January to July, is that information posted to the website?
Nope.
Our website?
No,
That's
we
what
don't
we're
have any
talking
way to get it there.
So-
That's what I'm saying, if we had some way to get it there.
So can we do that? Is that something we're thinking
Yeah,
about?
just send me the stuff every month and I can get it posted.
Okay,
I'm the
but,
one that posts the,
so what, maybe we should talk about
Yeah,
after,
we'll
what all we can put there.
Okay.
Because I don't want to just put that schedule, the things that come out of the meeting, et cetera, you know, that it's available. We talked about that before, of having like a shared drive, really a spot other than a Google Drive. But yeah, we should talk about
yeah,
it.
we'll talk.
And then the other thing I was gonna mention is, talking about the LDS Church, in our stake, we have a state communications specialist. And each ward is calling a state ward communications specialist. And so there's a high council person in our state that's over emergency preparedness. I think it would be
Nate Mon,
Nate Long, be very, very valuable to communicate with him and get with the education person, the communication person, to get all that information on the stake website and links back to wherever we're gonna put all this information at.
so
She will do that, I guarantee it.
Nate he used to come to meetings, he doesn't any longer. And I've invited him, that's another mountain.
So I'll get you the name of the communication specialist, you can reach out to her.
Will you do something that's have her reach out to me?
I can,
Because this is 4 hours a week, it's turned into 4 hours a month, it's turned into about 4 hours a day.
okay.
And I am strictly a volunteer. So instead of me trying to dog people, you have them reach out to me.
Thank you, Dave. Okay,
Thanks, Dave.
a couple of things I thought of, Dave. So we could always make sure in our newsletter that we do an emergency preparedness section of the newsletter, and we're in the process of getting a new website. And we're even hoping that we can do a monthly newsletter that can be, on the website. It's too expensive to mail them out, but that's, I think, a good way that we could get some of this information. Another thing too, we have TextMyGov. I don't know how many of you have signed up for TextMyGov. We have about a little less than 700 people in the city that have signed up. But at any given time, if we needed to send out some kind of emergency correspondence, we could. So if you haven't signed up for that, you can't miss it. If anytime you go into Hooper's website, it sometimes obnoxiously blocks your path. So that would be another thing. So I think these really are some things. Another thought I had was that I could check with Beaver County, but there's a possibility we could maybe write an easy grant to get you a trailer. I don't know if that's something that would qualify, but I could certainly check. Those grants are only in the amount of $2,000, so that's not a huge substantial amount, but it could be a start that we could maybe find a used trailer that you could, but those are just some thoughts.
Well, and it's not just the trailer, it's what's in the trailer.
Yes,
But I thought we had emergency preparedness that had a portion of that tax or that utility tax.
and there is, yes, so that could also be used, yeah. Yeah, Search great, I was trained, it's been a few years ago, so I'm sure I'd have to refresh, but it's a great training to go through.
It is.
So yes, thank you. Okay, any other questions from the council for Dave? Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, the next thing then, Malcolm is going to do a presentation for us on chapter 8 entitled 10. So we kind of went through this a little bit last time. We had a presentation from Jacob Hansen back in August. So he's going to go through that, and if you have any questions, we can ask those as well.
Keep in mind that the changes are not just chapter 8. Chapter 8 establishes the daily residential use, but that means you've got to change things throughout Title 10. So you need to glance through it. There aren't a lot, and it's easy to run through and see the changes, but it isn't just any.
Thank you, Rick.
All right, well, excited to talk a little bit about Chapter 10, Dave. Thanks for all of your work on the emergency preparedness plan for Hooper. That's great to know. So, as Reed mentioned, we updated our Title 10, which included Chapter 8, 1 to 2 family residential use. That's single family, including minor subdivisions and duplexes. I know we've had a lot of presentations, a little dents on presentations today, so if you guys want them as this one, you can, but it's up to you. Alright, we'll keep going. The background on this one was there was a Senate bill and a House bill passed. It's kind of the first of 2024, I believe, and essentially they want to expedite and simplify the approval of the subdivision process. It's only going to go through a political process if the intended use is not permitted by right. So there shouldn't be any, that implies that this is going to limit the City Council and Planning Commission's involvement in the approval process. It limits, you guys can't be the land use authority in this process by the state code that got put in place. The Planning Commission could be, and we worked with the Hanson Group to figure out the most flexible way to involve the Planning Commission thoroughly. It also establishes the subdivision review process, which you guys are all fairly familiar with that diagram. We'll go through just briefly. That really highlights the requirements and the timeframes on the subdivision review process. It combines the preliminary and final review. So the last two items I would want to point out aren't specifically required by SB 174. We, working with the Hanson Group a little before my time, I guess the city, determined that combining the preliminary and final review provided the most flexibility and the most involvement with the Planning Commission. It also kept it the simplest due to improvement plan limitations and when they can be reviewed in either final or review. By combining them, it kept it so that we could thoroughly review the plans and do them at the same time. And then the Planning Commission is the land use authority and the City Council is the appeal authority. So I just wanted to highlight these changes, the Chapter 8 technical, and then, so we had our Chapter 8 that we stuck at the bottom of Title 10. We implemented a technical review committee, and we'll go through that briefly. We did some adjustments to our minor subdivision, which was not required, but just felt to fit with some of the updates. We did a few updates to our sewer ordinance, which you guys saw at that first meeting, and the appeals process was updated just kind of inherently through the process of the update of Chapter 8. So Chapter 8 specifically, this diagram I think that Hanson Group put together for us really does a pretty good job. We're required to have a concept conference. That's really not a big deal for Hooper City. Jared, our Public Works Director, really thoroughly promotes concept conferences. I don't know if other cities that was a problem, but now it's required to offer a concept conference. We do them all the time and are really open to them. We get a lot of information out to potential developments through that, and it really saves a lot of issues in the application process. You can see it puts a time limit on the city to schedule that conference once it's been requested by the applicant. The applicant at that point can submit a complete application. That's a key factor. It has to be a complete application for us to begin the 15-day calendar day cycle, and that's really the big piece. We're on a pretty tight time frame. The city will check then with conformity and ordinances. City responds. We have 15 days, as mentioned there, to 15 days to respond. Here we have 15 days to notify water conveyance facilities. And then the city can hold just one public hearing. That's a pretty important note, and maybe a slight change that we aren't required to have a public hearing anymore, and we can only hold one. And so you can kind of see with that time frame where we only have 15 days to respond, and as you kind of look at step 4, if you look at step here after they're approved, 20 business days to approve or deny, you'd want to make sure, with the Planning Commission meetings, we're going to have to use these 15 days to respond and these 20 days to approve or deny fairly strategically to ensure that we hit one of the monthly Planning Commission meetings. I know there's even been talk slightly about Planning Commission having 2 meetings. That may be implemented, I don't know, as things move. That being said, once the city responds after 15 days, if it needs more work, the applicant has, they only have up to 40 business days to respond, or we get 20 more business days to review and respond. And if you're limited, one important note here is we're limited to 4 cycles of this. So we can do this 4 times, 4 phases. After that, we either have to approve or deny it based off of compliance or not. If we deny it, they can reapply, so it's a little bit funny, but they can't reapply. We put a little bit of a caveat there. They can't reapply in fundamentally the same manner. They have to update it to change it substantially, so they don't just reapply with a failed application once again. So that's a note. Planning Commission approves, revised application, and approves, and then after that, the applicant completes the improvements or post guarantees, and they need to record. We did update this. This is just an image from the Hanson Group. We'll need to have them updated on their end to 2 years. They need to record within 2 years or they lose their vesting. That's something that we felt was important, so that we don't just have pending ones, and that if ordinances change and they haven't recorded, that there's a vesting cycle that they would then be subject to the new ordinances. This kind of spurred the discussion, and with Hanson Group's recommendation, we implemented a technical review committee, because as you can see, it's a fairly tedious process, maybe cumbersome or time consuming. It'll be quick. That being said, we put a technical review committee together that can help review the application A for completeness, so the Land Use Authority, the Planning Commission can outsource duties to us, and they're highlighted here. One of them is to review the application for completeness, and really you can kind of see here the purpose would just be to implement this process as effectively and timely as possible to ensure that we're responding in the manner and time that needs to be. The people on, you can read here, city attorney, city planner, planning chair, or his or her representative, the city engineer, public works director, as designated by the city planner. I added this recently, or an equivalent position. I want to make sure that, whether it's the planner or whoever you guys decide is going to be, or the land use authority decides is going to be putting that together, has them on there. The attorney will be by request, he's not always involved, but we'll, as the TRC at the staff level, we'll make sure we're reviewing them within the time frame, and we'll make sure we're giving the feedback to the land use authority or planning commission as promptly as possible, so that they can make the decisions. And that's kind of how the TRC will function. Another piece that got updated that I think was important, and Councilmember Hill wanted to make sure that we were all aware of some updates that Chapter 8 we felt needed to be done to stay congruent, was our minor subdivision process. That's included in this, so we really spelled that out here, that there will be no more than 3 new lots will be created from an original parent parcel in a minor subdivision. We kind of toyed with, because of the restrictions on the minors, it almost got to the point where was it worth having minors or not, and we thought a lot about that as a bunch of, as a land use authority when we met and with Hanson. But we still think there's some key advantages that we spelled out to do one. They don't have to do a full improvement plan unless they're going to build on an existing road, or they're going to build an existing road, or build on an existing road, or no, excuse me, unless they're going to build a new road as part of their development. Then they need a full improvement plan. But they're not going to build a new road and they're building on an existing. We're really just going to require one simple improvement plan, a single page that shows utilities. And so that's one advantage. Another advantage is at the land use authority's discretion, and Weber Morgan Health, they can do septic systems on a minor subdivision. A final benefit to a minor subdivision is they can escrow for the coverage item, they can do septic systems, so that would be the final one. It kind of spurred discussion, and we've had some applications where we wanted to make sure our sewer ordinance was up to date and that it was applicable. So we updated that to include all our forms of sewer, whether it was vacuum, gravity, developer-led regional lift stations, which we've had recently, like at Rawson Ranch. And then we required that subdivisions are going to install and connect to the sanitary sewer system, which was implied prior. We just really spelled it out clearly with our new update. And then additionally, we permitted minor subdivisions only to explicitly, only minors can apply for septic systems, because we don't want to have a bunch of large developments, getting built out on septic. We want to make sure that our sewer master plan is being followed, and that developers are working with us to build out the infrastructure required to grow healthy and with substantial utilities. Another piece that kind of got updated inherently in the process was the appeal process. Before, it would have been, we had our reviews, final and preliminary, and then it would have gotten approved from your guys' body, and then the appeal process would have gone directly to an appeal authority, would have been if there was an appeal filed. Because you guys aren't involved in the process, the city council will be the appeal authority, and so if there was an appeal for an application, you guys would hear that appeal. It would then go to our old process of a hearing officer, and then finally would be subject to Utah code. They'd have to exhaust these 2 remedies before they could explore a court situation, or take us to court for something like that. In in that process, obviously, there's a lot that we identified. It's a fairly sizable chapter that affects a large title. A couple that just to highlight, and they're not significant, but just a few to highlight. We need to put a definition, we feel, for building lots and parcels. There's some confusion in there as you read through. We don't have them currently, but with this, we want to spell that out clearly, that a parcel is not a building lot and vice versa. A building lot's approved and ready to be subdivided. We want to spell out a little bit in our existing ordinance, in my opinion, the street frontage improvements in a minor aren't as clear as I would want them to be written. I want to make sure that the escrow process for that is clear as we're continuing to extend that as an advantage for minor subdivisions. So that's something to consider. And lastly, we did set up a process to remedy, as you saw, once they get approval, they only have 2 years to record or it expires, and then they're subject to new ordinances and changes. But our current process, you know, as the city's been whole, we really don't have a great process, in my opinion. You'll see we'll have developers who record, start building, and they've escrowed funds, right, to record, and then they don't complete it. We've had situations where they don't complete it timely. We get issues with appearance and debris, etc. That's something to consider. I feel like moving forward, we should probably put some stipulation or some type of requirements to complete in a timely manner. That's something that's not in place now, but as we reflected on this, we felt would be significant. So just some staff recommendations at a high level. This was effective as of 12/31/2024 for all intensive purposes, the new bill that we just described briefly there with Chapter 8 included. We've been advised from our legal counsel and also by the Hanson Group as well that we would be implementing this process. So we have 2 under review now, and that process will be beginning with them. Unless I'm told differently, that's kind of how we're working with it. And so that being said, whether we approve it or not, I think it's state law at this point. And so, you know, I understand we want to get ours right, and I understand the need to understand it thoroughly. But I think that having it in place will be beneficial to reviewing them, and we can update it as we go. So my recommendation would be to approve it on our next city council meeting there. Do you guys have any questions for me? And I'm by no means an expert on this. I just tried to put a synopsis together and record what we've tried to do. One thing to caveat, and I can be very transparent, is Planning Commission approved this with some conditions required. We updated those conditions. Some changes have been made since then. I have a copy of this with highlighted changes since, well, with the conditions required by Planning Commission and anything that has been changed, you know, from, it was our Public Works Director specifically, and Reed had 2 very minor, just grammatical almost, or making titles match type changes. So those have also been implemented. So full transparency, there have been some modest changes in the document, but that's where we're at. Anyways, do you guys have any questions for me?
Can you go back to the flow chart? I think it was slide 2 or 3 maybe.
Yeah,
That one
sure.
right there.
Uh,
So down in the bottom right-hand corner, where it says, does it say 365 days?
It does, but we updated it to 2 years.
Why did we do that?
That was one of Jared's changes from the last time it was approved. I think that posting escrow within 365 days is very reasonable, so you can post your escrow and go ahead and record. But if we approved a minor subdivision and we wanted all improvements done so that it could be recorded and they weren't going to do an escrow situation, I think Jared feels like a year is pretty tight to complete required improvements to record, if that makes sense. So he felt like 2 years was a fairly reasonable time frame, just with his years of experience, to actually make required improvements. And I don't think he felt like there was a lot of risk to extending it. That being said, obviously that's subject to your guys' perception of it.
So this is from the Hanson Group, correct?
The Hanson Group produced this, yeah, early on. Yeah, so I just copied this. We'll need to update that.
So have other cities adopted the 1 year? You know?
I don't know if other cities have adopted the 1 year. I would assume so. They've had other cities definitely do the same combined preliminary and final that we're doing, a Land Use Authority Planning Commission, and this was a pretty boilerplate template I think they were using across, so I would assume some are adopting it as 1 year. I can't be sure. I could ask the Hanson Group though, for sure, let you know.
Any thoughts about that?
Well, you know, we ran into a little bit of a problem when someone, you know, developers it just seems to go on forever. And one thing that concerns me, and maybe you addressed it a little bit, Malcolm, but when they start the subdivision, there's this sort of, there's ordinances that they're following. Well, in the course of 2 years, if something happens to change, and I don't know what to use for an example other than maybe a setback or the width of a frontage or something like that. Or a fence, exactly. So, are we saying that they are not vested? That's a word that's been shown up to the city council that, we're vested, so it doesn't matter how long it takes us to put this subdivision in, we can still do it the way we were originally approved to do it. But in the meantime, maybe there's been changes in city ordinances. That's what concerns me about, having this go out too long a time before we put a stop to it. So, did you address that at the end of 2 years? There is no vesting. In other words, at the end of 2 years, even though it's not complete, they're now subject to new ordinances that may be in place. Or
That's written in.
that's what?
It's written in the statutes.
I think I'd want to make a clarification specifically, and I don't want to act like I'm an expert here, but I think that's to the recording specifically would be separate from the completion. And so the recording requirement couldn't happen until they've completed improvements or posted escrow. Generally, they post escrow because they want to record quicker and sell lots. So if they didn't record, so they haven't posted escrow or made improvements, at 2 years, their application would not be vested any longer, and they would be subject to all new ordinances. I think the thing that's,
Read it through and make sure you're comfortable with it, but that's what it says.
Yeah, I think the thing that as well that we don't have in place that is a little tricky is sometimes it's like they record, right, and it can be easy. I think for developers, large developers, to post escrow, it's not a big deal, right? And then they record and they're vested, and then they take as long as they. Well, typically our developers' agreements are for 2 years to complete, but to be completely transparent, I'm not sure that the city's been phenomenal at doing our extensions of those 2 years, and then beyond our extensions, our what do we do after the 1 year typical extension? That's something we should address at some point after, once we get this implemented, we need to address that so that we have some control, and control might be the wrong word, but just some quality assurances, some timeliness assurances from developers. That is a great point to consider. I'm not sure that'd be something that'd be great to hear your guys' opinion. I'm not really sure what we can do at that point when they've already recorded and got invested, and then they're building. I don't know what you could do, if you can, because people might have bought in a lot already, you know what I mean, and how can we stop the development, because then we're hurting the citizens. So that's a tricky one. That's why we haven't put something in place. I don't think it's pretty hard to conceptualize, I think, but.
And anything you do is subject to state law as well. And the state law covers some of that as well, so you got to comply with that. A couple of comments. These changes don't have any effect on anything other than a 1 and 2 family unit. So any other subdivisions still have to go through the same process you've always used. Has no effect on rezones, has no effect on the plat map, the general plan map, or the general plan itself. So all those things still come to you for changes. You do not make the final approval for the subdivisions entitled, they're in Chapter 8, but if there's a problem and either the city or the subdivider or one of the residents appeal it, then it does come to you. So that's it. The other thing to keep in mind, I think, is there have been changes. As I reviewed it, I couldn't tell who made what changes. It was really difficult to see which were the planning commission changes, which were the staff changes. So my thought is, once you approve this, and I think that needs to be right away because we're kind of past due, I think you might ask the planning commission to go back and look at it and see if they're in agreement with all of the things that have been done. And if they have other suggestions, you can make changes in the future. But with the deadline having passed, I think it's pretty important we get the thing online.
Did that tie into your question, though, Ryan? On the 365 days, why are we extending that to 2 years? Did that?
I think
sometimes it seems like a long way to go to hard.
Especially with a 1 or 2 lot subdivision. I mean, that should be pretty simple and simplified to get to where you need to be in 1 year's time. you
Yeah.
know? I don't
Yeah,
know.
we're very open to, we could make it 1 year. That was what Hanson Group recommended. Again, I think Jared thought with his specific verbiage or words there were that, with seasonality, right, like depending on when it was approved, if it got approved in winter, we had a rough wind, etc. He thought 2 years could be a little bit unreasonable, but I mean, there is a provision that you can ask for an extension, so I don't think it's something, like if we put a year, I think that's reasonable, and there could be an extension option. You could come in and explain that and kind of make it the exception as opposed to the standard, where they need to come and request, the additional time to report.
Well, we've done that in the past, we've granted extensions, so that would be consistent.
I'd be in favor of that, just so we don't have any extended loopholes going on.
I can update that for sure, and maybe before the next meeting and have that, and I'll run it by Jared and make sure, and not that Jared decides, man, he's just see if he has any really sound logic beyond what I just expressed, and if he does, I'll provide it. If he doesn't, then we'll accept it, or we'll update it to 1 year and give it back to you guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
maybe that extension could have just a 1-year extension. I mean, again, I go back to one subdivider in particular, he's been at this for like 3 years and it's still not even getting
Yeah,
close.
yeah, we
And,
need to limit the extension time
But
as
it's
well,
only
for
for
sure.
1 and 2 lot subdivisions, it's not for 20 lot subdivisions.
No, it's for all subdivisions. They're 1 and 2 family residential.
yeah, it's
So,
supposed to be
essentially,
houses.
To be honest, about 95% of what we see in Hooper. Yeah. I guess 1 to 2 family, they're probably referencing duplexes, and we do allow 1 duplex per 10 homes, so it would be something like that. Just typical development for us. But other highlight just for you guys, like the Hanson Group, I had no idea, and I know none of us did. It was very. They came August 15th, about 10 minutes into your meeting, did a presentation, but they had. I don't think we had a lot of time to look it over. They do a good job of explaining it, much better than I do. They did this for a living. And then additionally, I asked you guys wanted Planning Commission, a member from Planning Commission to be here. Amanda was nice to come and ensure that comments were, put in place appropriately. So Amanda's here if you had a question for her. I want to make sure we're fully open and transparent about any updates and that if we happen to this point.
I think we're good.
And we do need to have a public hearing, so we will have that on February 6th, so we will get that noticed to have a public hearing.
We'll put it in proper ordinance form. If you can get
Yes.
me the one after you've made all the changes we talked about, or you talked about.
Yeah, I'll go through and accept all the changes so they're not colored and just make it the final product and get it to you.
Hey, Malcolm?
Well, maybe have one each way, so that if
Okay.
they want to look at the changes, they can still do it. One that is adopted, obviously, we don't need to have all of them.
I can do that.
And then I'll do the ordinance. I assume you're going to want to have it effective as quickly as you can.
Can we ask a question?
Who approves or denies the extension if that comes to pass?
It'd be the land use authority.
Okay,
Yeah,
planning commission.
is that correct?
What was the question?
Who approves or denies the extension for an application that was approved and hasn't been recorded? I think it's the LUA.
Is there a question? Did I hear someone had a question? Dave?
And maybe, I can't be here on the 6th, probably more appropriate the 6th, but in that cycle where they can appeal it 4 times, but yet at the bottom, there's only one public hearing, so it comes with the first application, there's a hearing, and then there's 3 other possible or revisions, whatever is required, but only that hearing is already, the public hearing is already passed, won't happen again?
There can only be 1 public hearing throughout the entire process. I think to maybe clarify, these are cycles of review. So they'll submit an application that has to be completed. We'll review it for completion, and if it's not complete, we'll provide feedback that it's incomplete. That would count as 1 review. Yeah, before it comes to,
Okay.
they can only do that 4 times. We can only go back and forth. There's a lot of back and forth. At 4 times, the state wants the city to make a decision, approve or deny, no more. Yeah, please.
Well, and to clarify, we're no longer required to have a public hearing. It's up to the discretion of the land use authority, which is a little bit unsettling in some ways. So that's what the law says now, so.
Yeah, it doesn't have to happen. thanks, appreciate you guys working with us so thoroughly on it. I know it's not been a blast, but we
Okay.
appreciate your guys' help and thorough understanding of it.
Okay, thank you. And if you read through it and have any other suggestions, you can always send those, from city council, and if you read through that and have any suggestions with that. Okay, so we are going to move on then to an action item. We need to elect a mayor pro tem for 2025. Debbie and Lisa, are they still on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, and Lisa, can she hear as well?
Yeah, she was on. I can't see now.
Okay, well, we have a
Double
quorum
check,
anyway, so.
sorry.
Okay, so is there someone we do this by nomination? So if there's someone that would like to nominate someone to be the mayor pro tem for 2025?
I would like to nominate Bryce Wilcox.
Okay, a nomination has been made for Bryce. Are there any other nominations?
I'll second Bryce.
Okay, so a motion was made by Councilmember Fowler, seconded by Councilmember Maragoni. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, the next thing we need to do then is talk about city council assignments. And before we do that, we have had Cindy Cox has been serving on our mosquito abatement board and has willingly agreed to continue to do that if city council is agreeable to that. I know she's done a great job and has let them know anytime we have an event out here in Hooper, but that is something that needs to come for, so is everyone on the council, any objections to Cindy continuing to do that as an assignment?
Not here.
Okay, Debbie, Lisa,
No, I think she does a great job.
okay, thank you. So you'll see down at the bottom we went through, Morgan and I, and we tried to figure out assignments that have to have a monthly commitment to them. And so no one person is overwhelmed with having too many monthly meetings. Some of them, just by nature of mayor, is one of my assignments. And so you'll see that's why I have the Central Weber Sewer Board. It's a trustee position that is for the term of my office. WACOG, which is the leadership with the mayor's Chamber of Commerce. The Western Weber CTC is a coalition that is with Fremont High and Westfield High School. And there is a key leader board that they request that the mayors be on, but they have also asked to have one more person on that board from each city council besides just having it be the mayor. And so I don't know if you just want to go through and say what assignments, some cities the mayor just appoints. I thought it would be nice if you have specific assignments, and Morgan can take these down as we go through them. So we did the mayor pro tem, the mosquito abatement, we're going to continue to have Cindy Cox do that. The Weber Fire District, Ryan has been doing that. I don't know, Ryan, if you want to continue doing that, if there's,
I would like to.
okay, anybody else? I don't know if there's someone.
Well, I was planning to make a motion that we table this, because I don't think we've really had time to really go through all the assignments. I think some of them have changed from what we've had other years. I have no problem with those that have been serving, like we talked about Cindy Cox. But I'd like to make a motion that we table these assignments until we have time to go through and review them
Okay.
and see how well they will fit.
That'd be nice if Lisa was here too.
And Lisa, yeah.
Yes, well, and would it be agreeable then that you continue on with your same assignments until our next meeting? Yeah, because I don't want certain assignments, like, because there are monthly meetings, I don't want things to end up falling through the cracks because we don't have representation. Okay, so, motion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to
Yes.
table the assignments.
So a motion has been made by Councilmember Fowers to table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second is made by Councilmember Wilcox. Any discussion on that motion?
When do you want to have that discussion? Like, we say we're going to talk about it, but when are we going to do it?
Yeah, well, I think we need to have it by our next meeting,
Yeah.
so,
Okay. Okay, Okay, we'll plan on that then for the agenda for the February 6th meeting. Okay, thank you. Okay, so in our work meeting, for those of you that were here or were not, we had a I'm sorry, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Is that Lisa that said aye as opposed?
I wish she meant to.
Anyway, it's just a little delayed. Okay. Lisa, were you voting in favor of tabling?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just a little bit of delay. Okay, now we'll move on. Some of you were here at our work meeting, some of you were not, but we had Jeff Morgan here, who is a JUB engineer who is over our storm water. It's actually the SWIP program here in Hooper. And he went through, the state has done a few things that we have to update our new stormwater management plan. And so we need to, by motion, approve the adoption of the updated stormwater management plan so we can put that on our website. And any of you are welcome to review it. It's about 458 pages. So any questions on that?
I'll make the motion that we approve the adoption of the updated stormwater management plan as presented by JUB Engineering.
Okay, the motion was made by Councilmember Hill. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second was made by Councilmember Fowers. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I think we probably had that covered. Okay, so the next thing then is about the Planning Commission. And so maybe just a little bit of a review for those that were not here at our last meeting. Hooper has had, since 2018, a Planning Commission of 5 members. Prior to that, there was a Planning Commission of 7 members. They had a hard time at times getting a quorum there, which was a quorum of actually 5 at that time. And so they changed their ordinance to change it to 5. So it's been that way since. We had 3 Planning Commission members whose terms expired as of December 31st, 2024. In last meeting, there was 3 new Planning Commission members that were appointed with Ryan asked for, requested a resolution, and then it was corrected by Reed that it needed to be an ordinance to change our Planning Commission from 5 to 7 members. Just a little bit back history, back in January of 2024, I suggested to City Council and Planning Commission that we change our Planning Commission to 7, or if not, at least 5 with 2 alternates, and no one was in favor of that at that time. So one thing we need to discuss tonight. So I've been schooled really well by Reed as far as when we need to have public hearings. And he has reminded me over and over, in order for transparency in the city, to let everyone know what is going on in the city, that it is always an important thing to have a public hearing. And that's what he called me the day after and said, okay, we should have a public hearing on this. There's sometimes some debate whether you have to or not on all land use. Anything that has to do with land use, you are legally required to have a public hearing. The Planning Commission is now our land use authority, which certainly falls within land use. And with that, and I repeat with the matter of being transparent, I think it's really important that we have a public hearing on this matter because we are changing an ordinance. I've consulted with several mayors, several attorneys, consulted with 4 attorneys with the Utah League of Cities and Towns, a couple from the state that have all recommended, yes, you need to do this with the public hearing. And so I know some were concerned that it was not on here as a motion, and that was the reason, because, and Reed and Brandon were already aware of this, that it was to be a public hearing that we have coming up. Sometimes what we've done in the past as well, anytime it has to do with land use, we have always had it go to our Planning Commission first, and they make a recommendation that then is sent up to City Council. And so that might be something also to consider, since this is our planning commission, which is our land use authority. We might want to have this at their next, have the public hearing at their next planning commission meeting, so that they can be able to get that input and then make recommendations to the city council. So,
No.
Well,
That's not the ordinance.
no,
That's not the ordinance.
incorrect.
The ordinance is that the mayor recommends the planning commission members for the city council to approve with advice and
That's correct.
consent.
well, actually only consent if you read the
Advice and
ordinance.
consent.
No,
Well,
and consent.
no,
well, if
well,
you-
we'll take some time, we'll read some code in a minute, but
yeah,
I'm gonna challenge you, because I heard from Brandon's own mouth, probably 4 different times, that we do not have to have a public hearing on this. It does not have anything to do with land use, opening the general plan, or budgetary items. So, I mean, Ryan's motion specifically stated the conditions of that motion. We would go ahead and approve those appointments on the condition that in this meeting, we would, you can look at the notes, I've listened to it several
Me
times,
too.
that we would have the ordinance ready, Reed's had this ready, we just got it at 4:41 yesterday.
yeah, we
So this
received
is-
it Monday,
This has
didn't we?
been, let's stay
Yeah.
focused, this has been prepared, you know,
Yeah, you received it a week ago.
days before we got it.
No, we just received it Monday.
No, a week ago.
No, we didn't. We received it Monday.
So
Yeah.
my point is Ryan's motion was conditional on, in this meeting, we adjust to a 7-member council and appoint 2 more commissioners, which we discussed, and it was Sheldon Greener and Blake Severing. Because the whole reason behind this was that we needed experience. You put in 3 planning commission members that had 0 experience. So that's the reason why we expanded it to 7 and have those 2 be back on there. And that was the condition of his motion. So I guess what you're telling me is you're gonna override a city council motion?
So if you go back from the minutes that you approved tonight
Yes.
and read that, it was not a condition. It was
Yes.
a request.
No, it was not a
You go back,
request.
you go back and
It was
listen
not a
to it.
request. It was on a
So the
condition.
motion word for word said, and I actually have it, I could pull it up in my notebook. Based on our work meeting, I make the motion that we approve the 3 planning commission members as appointed by Mayor Bingham, and or request that a resolution be made to increase the planning commission from 5 to 7 members. And then that's when Reed said, it's not a resolution, it's an ordinance. And you said, thank you. And you said, and we discuss and you said, I can't think of the word, and I said stagger. And you said, yes, stagger the terms.
I wrote it down word by word, and that's not how it
Let's
was.
hear it, Deborah, please share.
It says, to approve as recorded a resolution, and then there was the discussion about it's not a resolution.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, to change it, and increase it to 7 in 2 weeks for terms to be determined by the city council in 2 weeks. All their terms will be determined at that time. That's how it was. And we voted on that. And it wasn't that we would guess at it or that we would change it or whatever. And it said, and during the work meeting, we were asked if we would go to 7, if we would approve those 3 tonight. That we would go to 7 if we approved those 3 tonight, and we said yes. And so there was kind of a little agreement. I listened to these meetings like 3 times now, because when this wasn't on the agenda, I heard it wasn't on the agenda, I felt a little bamboozled, shall I say? And so I went back and read, and that's what I voted on, was that this meeting, we would follow Ryan and Ryan's motion, and we would vote for the 7-man commission
And
this
to add
night.
to that, that right after Ryan made his motion, that this will be taken care of on our January 16th meeting.
That's correct.
That's
And
correct, so.
And the next day, Reed called me and said, you have to have a public hearing.
We don't have to.
So let's get to
So-
that point. Let's settle that right now.
Okay.
Is a public hearing required? Legal counsel?
You can argue both ways.
So,
Yes or no?
Public hearing.
Is it required?
What's that?
Is it required?
is it required?
We don't have to, do we?
Probably not. But you can argue, you can make an argument the other way, but, probably not.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly what Reed's saying, it could be argued both ways.
Sure.
Because
everything
every
can.
single attorney,
So-
including the state attorney general that I spoke with, said,
Well,
that-
obviously you don't want to do it, so you're trying to find a way
you
out.
know what? I'm
So
the one,
let's just stick with what the motion said and obey the law and get it done.
so if you remember back, as I said, I'm the one that originally suggested about 7. And at that time, one of the
That's history.
planning, that's history, but there were all these reasons as of not to. But like I said, I don't know how many times this year, Reed has told me, in order to be transparent, we should do a public hearing. I'm not saying I am against having a 7-member planning commission. I'm the one that suggested having a 7-member planning commission. What I am saying is, in order to be transparent to the residents of Hooper, we should do a public hearing, because that's what we have done with all of our other hearings, or with all of our other ordinances. I guess my question is, why do we have to have that done without a public hearing? Is there something we are trying to hide from the residents? Are we trying to not be transparent, or why would we not?
We
I
just-
guess my question is, why would you not
We,
want to
we
have a
just,
public
we
hearing?
just motioned on lots of things without a public hearing. We do it all the
I'm,
time.
Not
I'm
ordinances,
sorry.
though.
We don't
haven't.
have-
We have not had any ordinances that we did not have a public
Well,
hearing.
that's not entirely true.
Yeah, that's-
What, my suggestion has always been, if you have an ordinance, you have a public hearing.
Yes,
But have there been ordinances passed in the past without a public hearing?
oh, sure, yeah, I'm just talking about my term as mayor, since I've
No.
been mayor, that
We
Reed
have
has
had,
always suggested.
we have passed ordinances without public hearings while you've been Mayor Sherry.
That,
Here-
not that I'm
Here's-
aware of.
here's the
having
other-
over the years.
You know, we talk about communication and transparency, so let me back up to the motion. Okay, that's notification number 1, to have it on this. Ryan made the motion, the council approved it. Number 2, I sent out an email to request it, make sure it's on the agenda to the admin. The third one, I actually hand-delivered a letter 2 days before requesting it be on there as a motion item. The fourth was I followed up with an email. No response from you or anybody, so it
Ryan,
was,
can I just remind you of something? You are violating the Open Meeting Act if you are
How's that?
sending an email to city council members and they are responding.
they
that-
didn't respond, I'm requesting.
Well, there has
I'm
been.
Well, let's
requesting-
make sure everybody's clear on that.
Yeah, that's,
A meeting of 3 or more members of the council, whether it's in person, whether it's by electronics, or whether it's on a conference call, is improper. That doesn't mean you can't communicate, it just means you can't have a conversation and make decisions.
Yeah,
In fact, we got a warning today from the Attorney General that shouldn't happen.
yeah.
But again, that doesn't prevent you from talking to each other. You certainly have the right to do that.
Yeah, well, let me just go back as far as this email. So when Reed called me the day after and said, you need to do this by public hearing,
Well, let's
so,
clarify that. The public hearing that I was talking about was not this. The public hearing was for the one that we just did,
Title 10,
Title 10.
which
Yeah,
this
that
is
could have been
part of.
done as long as
Yeah.
you'd have done it then.
Yeah,
You had to have 10 days, so you
Yeah.
could have done the public notice Monday, and then it would have been okay.
Yeah.
So now we're doing the public hearing on that one later, and you do have to have a public hearing on that, no question about it.
so as far as receiving the ordinance, we received that from Brandon. It was Monday, January 13th at 4:37 PM was when we received this
Right,
ordinance.
but you received
Yeah.
the material to put in the notice the week before.
I didn't receive anything. for that, neither did Morgan. Yes, so that was the question. And so then, I think, Bryce, when you went to Morgan and requested this to be on, Morgan mentioned to you, we need to have a public hearing, and you
She
said,
did not say anything, because you know what? She was in a meeting with you.
oh,
I dropped
no,
off at front
earlier.
desk.
No, we're talking about earlier.
No, I don't, maybe she got that from you, but, you
Well,
know.
anyway,
Well, once established, we don't need a public hearing.
But the point is none of the city council got that email till today.
Sure.
Well, we sent it
Right.
out with the amended packet, which we did, because we had to also amend it because of the stormwater. And so then we got that from Brandon, which we received on the 13th, which still would not have been enough time to notice it for a public hearing. All I was saying is let's just do things correct.
We've already
Let's
established
do
we don't need
things
one.
transparent. Even if you don't, and like Reed said, normally, I mean, that's best case scenario. Best practice, right? In Hooper, don't we do best practice? So at our meeting on February 6th, that gives us time to notice it, we have a public hearing. Is there a reason why you don't want to have a public hearing? I guess is the
Because
question.
we don't need to.
Oh, well, why didn't it get scheduled right after
Why
our
didn't you
meeting
do it?
then?
If you knew, why didn't you
were
schedule it?
aware of that?
Because we didn't have the ordinance. We didn't have any ordinance to
They had-
send out.
Well, you know it would have happened.
Well, you don't need the ordinance necessarily.
Yeah.
You
Well,
just have to notice it.
that's what
Yeah.
I was told, so.
So,
I don't know, I listened to the work
yeah, it's a
meeting
big
and
difference.
you stood and said that we might not even get it done till March. And I was very disappointed.
Yeah, and one thing people need to remember too, work meetings are discussions. Nothing can be decided or voted on in a
Well,
work meeting either, so.
That, everything
What
we
about
needed was
I
done.
thought the reasoning behind it was that we had to hurry and get those people back in because the planning commission had too much to do and needed to get going on some of these things they've been working on. They needed to keep going up with that.
Right, and the experience.
You know, and that's one thing we talked about as well with staff. So the part of that reasoning that was expressed is we're going to have so much more to do. In all reality, we don't know yet because this process is new for all of them. Whether there are 5 or there are 7, the new process with the 1 and 2 family subdivisions is new for everyone. So they're all going to be on the same playing field. Whether they've been in for 8 years, 1 year, 5 years, it's all going to be the same. And we're really streamlining the process, so we don't know yet if that's going to be more difficult or not. We don't know.
So let me throw one more thing out there. I'll just give you some documentation here to look at. So our planning commission met last week, January 9th. They appointed a new chairman and they did business, they made motions, they voted, et cetera, et cetera. 3 of those planning commission members had not been sworn in yet when they conducted that business and elected a new chairman. Under State Code 76-8-203, unofficial misconduct, it states, an actor commits unofficial misconduct if the actor exercises or attempts to exercise any of the functions of a public office when the actor, A, has not taken and filed the required oath of office. And down to section 3, a violation of subsection 2 is a class B misdemeanor. And so we had that happen last week. Those things took place last week with 3 people that had not been official planning commission members because they weren't sworn into office until after the meeting was completed.
Yes, and fortunately, Jessica Smith was never ever sworn in, and I would have to go back through the minutes to see if everyone else previously was sworn in, because we found out later, Bryce was never ever voted upon, which we did after the fact, and he continued to do it.
All you're doing is talking around, that doesn't make
Okay.
a lot.
Okay, so let me answer this then.
I'll-
Brandon was there on the call, And Brandon knew that, and Brandon didn't, because at that time, we went to get the paperwork to do that. Never at any time in that meeting did Brandon say, stop, don't do anything more until they swear him in, and we did swear him
Okay,
in.
but it's really frustrating. We always use them as an scapegoat. I'll tell you, for one thing, I know one of your planning commission members said, hey, do they need to be sworn in at the beginning of the meeting? They
Yes,
notified you.
they
And
did, and-
What did you do?
And then we went and got the paperwork to
So
do
did you
it.
swear them in?
And so then we came back and they were already going in on the meeting, and then when and Brandon never at any time said stop and do
Yeah,
that, and so we swore him in.
It's not Brandon's
So,
fault.
well, it's not Brandon's fault, and we were in the process of getting the paperwork, and when Jamie brought the paperwork back in, we did that.
So two
So
readings.
maybe to you, Reed, then answer the question then, are they not really sworn in? Would Jessica all that time shouldn't have been voting because she was never sworn in?
Probably not.
Yeah,
Well,
Bryce
they're
never
there-
should, because he
they're
was
there
never
for a
voted
reason.
upon. That's
I mean-
true, and we took care of the swearing in, and there was never anything said about there being a problem with that.
So the two issues we have is the motion item 2 weeks ago is not on the agenda as an action item, number one. Number two, last week, the planning commission acted inappropriately or illegally because they weren't sworn in. So the current planning commission we have is null and void last week. They didn't take effect until after the meeting on January the 9th. So they were effective whatever
Well,
time.
it was during the meeting, not after the meeting, it was during,
there
it
was-
was
So
during the meeting.
after they
It was after they
elected the chairman,
That is correct,
they
but it
became,
was
they
during the
became
meeting.
official
Right.
and legal, correct?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you know, and part of this probably could have maybe been prevented. Brandon was on Zoom, and we really appreciate him being on Zoom. If he would have been sitting there, maybe he would have said, stop, right at the time, and we would have done that.
I don't think he'd have known whether they were sworn in or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just can't use him as an excuse.
so in order to rectify the situation tonight, we need to have two names to vote on and to vote on an ordinance to change to a 5 to 7 member planning commission.
Right.
And then I do believe that we need to re-vote in a chairman of the planning commission with legal people on the commission.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Do you want to make that a motion?
I can't, it's not on the,
Oh,
it's not on the agenda.
we did another one.
We motioned the other item without it being on there.
Yeah, the problem is, it's not a motion, it's an ordinance, and it should be on the agenda.
Well, we tried.
I know. I guess the question is, does it make any difference if you do it now versus next time? The same arguments apply next time. And I think if you vote it in, make it effective immediately, and announce that in the notice that it's going to be made effective immediately, then you can appoint the members at that same meeting, and then they can meet the next week.
Well, let's just define the structure, who's going to be on there, when it's going to be noticed, public hearing, let's do that right
So
now.
it'll be 10 days prior to February 6th. What day is that?
We're going to have to do it on Tuesday.
It's the 27th, January 27th.
You can do it anytime next week.
Yes, January 27th will be the day that it will be
27th 's the last
noticed.
Yes, so do it prior to
And
that.
we need to notice up the Title 10 too, and
Yes.
that's a little bit tricky, Morgan, so we probably
Yes.
ought to talk about how to do it.
And then we'll plan on doing the public hearing, correct then?
You can have public hearing on the whole
Yes.
thing.
Let's,
This
yes,
is-
on the
talk
whole
about it. I mean,
thing.
don't be making decisions yet, we're going to talk about
But
it.
if you look at the ordinance, it does amend chapter Title 10, so if you're having a hearing on Title 10, it could be the whole Title
Yes, that's what I thought too, because it's chapter 5 in Title 10. Yeah.
10. And because of the urgency, both because the legislature wanted this done earlier, and because you need people on your planning commission, I think we can make it clear that you want to put it up for vote. If it passes, you make it effective immediately upon publication, which can be done the next day. If Morgan's able to do it, that'll be Friday.
Okay.
And you can have the other two people appointed. The ordinance that I wrote gives you the flexibility of arranging however you want, but never having more than two in any given year. If that's what you want, fine. I think I saw a copy of one that actually gave positions to them. You can do that. If you want in the ordinance, it might be simpler to do that outside the ordinance, just by regulation.
The other thing I noticed was your ordinance has, majority is 4 members instead of the 75%. Is that how we want to do
The
that?
quorum is 4 members, yeah. That's the way I put it.
Because 75% would be 5.
And they had 5 before.
I don't know, yeah, but you don't need to have that.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's go
Yeah, that was
for
the
Let's
question
go
we
for
had
it.
as well. One thing, which, I don't, do you want to decide that tonight on staggering, or do you want to decide that after? If we do, if you did go back and do them 2, 2, 2, and 1, you're getting new planning commission members every single year.
I think
There's
on
a
the
real
staggered
simple way to
ones-
do it. You put 1, 2, 3, 4. That represents a 4-year term. And then the first year, you put who's going to be in there in the first year. The next 2 would probably be the 2 that already have 2 years left. On the 3rd year, they would have to be 2 new people, and the 4th year could be 2 new people.
Right, so you'll need next meeting to decide who goes in which slot.
Right, there you go.
Yeah.
But it's a simple process. It's not, it'd be real simple to stagger those terms.
So do we need to meet again to do that?
To stagger the terms?
Or to
Well,
decide
we could just-
which
No,
individuals?
yeah, you've got to decide at some point, you need to do it at the next meeting. You don't know who the people are at this point, so I guess you just call them positions, or you can wait until you know the names, and you can say this one's for 1 year, this one's, I don't think you want anybody for the 2 years, because you've already got 2 coming to do in 2 years.
Yeah.
You'd have 2 more in 3 years and 2 more in 4 years.
And we appointed 3 last week that were appointed under our old ordinance for 4 years.
No, they weren't. I think we withheld length of time until you got the other side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one thing, if you
And
have.
was it valid then? That's my question, you know, was our meeting when we appointed these even valid? Does it even count with who they elected as the chair and vice chair? Because they hadn't been given the oath of office. Is it
You just redo it. What things did they pass? Have you got people out there building buildings that they were authorized to do?
No,
Yes, there were some conditional use
Two
permits
oversized
that were
structures.
passed, some oversized
Might be a
structures.
challenge.
Mhm. Yeah.
Was there any question that they were going to be approved, or was it?
No, they were
No,
Yeah.
yeah,
Any
yeah.
problem?
So the main thing is the chairman, re-electing the chairman on February 15th.
Well, we can check with Brandon then with that. One thing to think about, like I mentioned, if you do 2, 2, 2, and 1, we are having a new planning commission member every single year. If you have 3, 2, and 2, always there's still a majority in, because at any given time there would be 4 that would have existing terms, and then 3, which might be a little bit easier than every year having new planning commission members. So that's just something to think about if you do the 2, 2, 2, and 1.
It'd be nice to
Is
know
it
when
when-
you write the ordinance, know what you want.
Yeah, so even with the 3, 2, and 2, there would always be 4 that would always still be staying, and then 1 year 3, because it's been 3, I mean, you've known for 3 years there were 3 that were coming up. But 2, 2, 2, and 1, every year we're getting new planning commission members, and that makes it a little bit, I think, difficult.
Well, we'll just
So-
take a look at that, because I think there's a simpler way than what you just explained.
Yeah,
And
well, that's,
stagger 'em.
could be very simpler.
So Rita, a question for you, if there's some wordage that we'd like to maybe add to this.
Yeah, tell me what it is.
Okay, so-
Let's get it in.
So I think to reflect more on the state code, to be more consistent with it, I think we ought to say, this is 10-5B, the appointment process, so it would be first page, right? I think it's right.
Okay.
Yeah, right there. So, I think it should read, the mayor and city council shall appoint the members of the commission subject to the approval of the city council's majority vote. I think that's more consistent with how the state code reads, because I think we're getting hung up on who's got the power, who's got this and that, and appointments, so I think that would put us more in a cohesive, a true city council, and we all talk and discuss about who should get appointed, and then there would be.
You want all the interview orders?
Well, we
Why not?
couldn't, because then
Well,
that's,
one of us.
it's against the Open
yeah.
Meeting Act. But it's been, the mayor has appointed planning commission, that's how it always has
But
been.
it
Correct,
says,
Al, did you
on the
appoint?
state code, it says may. It says may. So,
They always have.
well, the state code it says may. So that's why I'm saying, hey, there's a little bit of a, you know, it's inconsistent. So let's just put everybody together, so we're all a council, and let's function as a council and do it together.
Is there a reason why now you want to
Yeah,
change
because
that?
of this. The last 2 times it's been really a hassle.
You know what, though, Bryce,
So,
you didn't even vote last week or 2 weeks ago in favor, so you,
and you want to know why?
no,
You want to know why I
but
did?
you didn't vote in
But
favor of having
I
the resolution.
still respect everyone else's motion. I respect that. That's the law. If you veto a motion, you're subject to a Class B misdemeanor. So, no, I respect that. That's the way they voted. I respect that. Yes, I said nay, and I have my reasons,
Yeah,
and it wasn't personal.
no, I'm
So-
just saying
so
you
anyway,
voted against the
I did vote
changing
against
the
it, but I'm
ordinance to 7. That was part of
maybe
it,
I
that
did.
you said,
Well,
yeah,
things have changed.
yeah,
You know, we have a lot
Well-
more on their plate, and I realize that, hey, there's a lot of responsibility there, so more minds might be better this time, so.
yeah. I guess I'm just curious why for 24 years the mayor has appointed with the consent of the city council,
You
and
know,
now you're trying to
my
change
point to
it.
that is how many ordinances have you changed in 24 years? Because a lot of them were boilerplate. So, and we're probably gonna change more. I bet we've changed dozens, so it's nothing out of the ordinary. Anyway, that's my suggestion on that.
Okay, so we are going to then notice this, by January 27th, there will be a public hearing on February 6th. The motion will be made at that time. By then, we will have the ordinance ready to go. The motion will be made after the public hearing, and we will vote on that then.
Well, the ordinance is here, except for the signing part and the effective date.
Yeah.
I can put that on. Now, if you want additional language, I need to know that.
Well, we need to know who the candidates are as well, and we discussed that. So they need to become
Well, but
prepared.
the discussion was made in a work meeting. It was not
I
part of the
think
motion.
I'm part of my motion.
But remember when you made that motion then,
Well,
because you
so
wanted
we-
to
So
extend
the
them and
whole
then Ryan
purpose of
corrected and said,
expanding
right?
to
that
7
you-
was to keep experienced people on there. So that was the whole reason behind it.
Yeah, that was the whole thing, was to have some experience,
You know,
because
one thing just to say a little bit about that, not that it'll make any difference with you. Everybody has had a position where they didn't have any experience. Everybody sitting up here at one time had no experience when they became a city council member, when they became a mayor, or when they became a planning commission member. No one started with experience unless if they had perhaps been in another city. The 3
Exactly.
candidates that were voted upon, appointed and voted upon were 3 very capable men that put in their applications to serve. It had nothing to do with anybody that was currently serving and their lack of ability. It was because we had an interest and we had 3 capable men that wanted to serve. Maybe some of you out there at some time will want to serve, and we really appreciate that. And so I guess I take a little bit of a question, I guess, at maybe the answer of always keeping on the same ones. Isn't that why we have new elections? Isn't that why we have new appointments? To maybe give other people to serve that might want that opportunity to serve. So yes, the ones that serve, thank you, they did a wonderful job. I believe the new ones that were appointed will serve and do a wonderful job. I don't believe that means that we always just have to keep the exact same ones on if there's other people that are willing to serve as well.
Right,
I have a
and
question.
they-
Did you go out and recruit those 3? Did you go talk to them and have them come in and apply, or did they? Because none of them really, there wasn't any one of the 3 that's really ever attended meetings or been very involved. So that's my question to you. Did you go out and recruit them to come and apply?
So one of those told Ryan, I believe it was maybe possibly a year ago, about applying. A couple of others had mentioned before, they came in and turned in their applications like everyone else. So that is
but
something
That's
that,
not the question I asked. I know but did you go out and talk to them about coming in? Did you go
so
recruit
there
them?
were applications that came in just like everyone else. That's how it occurred. So I know it's funny because when you know, Blake came in for his interview and he said, man, this is formal. He said, when I was called before, it was get in my truck. And then he was told that, you know, and that was with you, Dell, that you and Bryce had already decided that he should be on the planning commission, and I didn't do that. We allowed,
You're telling things right now that are not true.
well,
So,
okay. Anyway,
let's move
so,
on.
yes, let's move on. We
Yeah,
had people
I-
put in their
I-
applications. Debbie came to the interviews. At the end of the interviews, I said, Debbie, is there anybody here who you would feel uncomfortable? And she said no, as did Malcolm. Malcolm was part. So I really feel like, you know, as far as transparency and due diligence, we put it out for people to come in and apply. They came and applied. We did interviews, and that was it. So that's enough with that. So
Can I just make one comment? I was brand new when I came in, granted, but thank goodness there was a majority that weren't, because I feel that with their experience, they guided me and they helped me learn. And the experience is priceless when you have a commission or a council, and that's my true belief. And that's why when I gave you the names of the people that I felt would be best for the planning commission, they only had one of those gentlemen on it. And I just wanted to, you know, state that yes, I do feel that that experience is very important.
yes, it is. And this year we have 3 city council members that are up for election. So we may face a time when we have a lot of experience. We may face a time when we have 3 new ones, which was at the time when Debbie came in. So thank you, Debbie. Okay, so
Hey,
anything else?
One more on the
that?
planning commission, I just need to bring this up because I had lots of people reach out to me, so it's my obligation to do this. So I don't know, how did you think the planning commission went, the meeting in general?
So I don't know that we necessarily, I don't know that this is the time and the place to talk about that.
It is because they wanted me
Um,
to say it. So
do you know,
we had somebody acting appropriately, and I listened to it, and it was kind of disturbing. So that kind of activity and behavior, I don't think is acceptable or reflective of our community. And so it's my obligation because people came to me. So I'm going to bring that to light, that
Yeah.
behavior can't be accepted.
I agree. I had several come to me as well. There were, and mentioned about 2 individuals that felt like things probably weren't as appropriate, and that will be something. We're going to do some trainings with Planning Commission. I think that's expected, always respect from everyone, whether it's Planning Commission or City Council or any other meetings, and we try to keep those in control. So yes, thank you, and we'll make sure we do those trainings, which we're going to begin next week. So, okay, any other discussion on that then before we?
So just clarification,
Yeah, where we at?
when are we gonna get the 2 names, additional names from the planning commission, from the mayor as appointed? When will we hear that? Not till February 6th.
Well, February 6th is when we're doing the public hearing. And Reed, did you say we could do the public hearing and approve it that night?
Yeah.
But could we also submit names that night, or do we need to wait till our next meeting?
No.
Okay.
Once you have to do it in the right order, you gotta change it before you put the names in.
Okay, so the public hearing first, and then we would have a motion to approve the new ordinance. Okay,
And then you could appoint, and that wouldn't be effective until the ordinance is effective, which will be a few days later. You can do it, but they'll be effective, they'll be appointed as of such and such date.
okay.
Okay.
So by next meeting, I will bring 2 names for approval. Well, I will appoint 2 for the approval of the city council.
Just keep in mind, Sheldon Greener,
One of them was already
it was already
agreed upon.
agreed upon.
In a work meeting, no.
No, it wasn't. It was up here.
But it wasn't part of the
Also
motion.
Lake Severn. So we're talking, the whole concept was keeping the experience, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah, but it wasn't. Okay.
And then
I will
clarification
talk to our legal
on
counsel about that because it was in the work. And we will go through the motion.
February 13th, what will take place at that meeting? We'll nominate a new chairman.
I will talk with Brandon about that if he feels it's a necessity that we do that, where they were sworn in, but I will talk
Well,
with
Reed's sitting
Brandon
right
about
there.
that. Well, but Brandon was the one in the meeting.
Reed's just
Well,
as knowledgeable as
So-
Brandon is.
Brian, are you read the law, the code?
Well, yeah, but there's a lot of
I don't know what
codes,
you wanna
like
argue about that.
whatever the Attorney General mentioned today, there's lots of laws. Okay, then Reed, do you want to rule on that now, or do you want me to talk to Brandon?
Talk to him.
Okay. Okay,
But it sounds to me like there's a legitimate issue here, so I don't see a reason not to do it.
yeah.
And it probably makes more sense to have the full commission there voting on the chair.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay,
So the first meeting in February,
February 6th.
February 6th, which is the first meeting in February, we will be we'll be approving the ordinance, as well as putting 2 new people on the commission, on the planning commission. Right, on the 6th.
Yes.
We would like those names like way before, we don't want them the day of.
Well, but, yeah, sometimes there's been some concerns. We had that happen once before, and then things were sent that weren't legal anyway. So, yes, it has to be 24 hours before. And last time I sent you all an email and told you if you had any concerns to let me know, and I didn't hear, I talked to Ryan Idell, I didn't hear from you or from you either, Bryce, about concerns, because as I mentioned, I'm not going to allow someone to stand there because they're willing to volunteer and then have disparaging things said about their character. I'm not going to allow that. So I did send you that, and so I will do that again. I will send you those names, and if you have questions, then please reach out to me. And so we do not have to put the names on the agenda. I found that out from Brandon. We do not. So
Just don't reply to the email, because then it's a quorum.
no, okay, that's one thing different. You send them out individually. Did you notice when I sent it out, they were individually? When you send out an email, and then you continue responding to that same one, and you're talking about decisions, or when you bring in a letter that
Well, if
says...
it's a group email, that's true.
Exactly.
If you're responding one-on-one, it's...
Yeah, it was a group email. Or if you bring in something that says everyone on the city council has approved of this, have you talked to people on the city council? That
You can
constitutes the open
Well,
We
meeting.
can talk
no,
individually.
if you do it with more than 3, you
Yes.
can't do it. If it's one-on-one,
Yes.
if you call Ryan and you talk, and then you call Dale and you talk, and then you call Bryce, that's not a violation.
Yeah, yeah, that's why when I sent out the email to you with the names, did you notice it came to each of you individually? So when you respond back, you're not violating the Open Meeting Act. But when you send out one and we're all on there, and then people respond, that is violating.
Yeah, you have a choice of either respond all or respond to the one that sends it. You just need to provide one.
Okay, any other discussion on that?
Well, it will be, again, with the advise and consent of the city council.
Well, I think ours,
What does the
ours,
statute say?
ours
Let's see what it
currently,
says. I think
ours
you've got a
currently
copy of it.
says, yeah, ours currently says consent.
The ordinance is exactly the way I've got it right here. It says, "Mayor shall appoint members of the council subject to the approval of the city council." That's
Yeah,
what the
subject to the
ordinance
approval.
says.
And the state says may.
State statute's a little bit different.
Yeah. Yep, it's a little different, but it says may. There's may, not shall. So we need
Yeah,
to
and
probably
ours
clean up
says
everything.
that, so. Okay,
Yeah, but the
any other
state
questions?
trumps.
Okay, so the next thing in then is citizen comment, and this can be about anything that was not on the agenda.
I had to bring the reading glasses and the iPad. I can't see anything anymore. So I appreciate your time for the council, the mayor, and the staff. This does have to do with the planning commission. However, it's different from the topics discussed that were on the agenda. Yes, it's Travis Gates, and I am a resident of Hooper.
Thank you.
I would respectfully like to address the most recent planning commission meeting from January 9th, and would ask that you each take time to review any transcripts, watch any video, or listen to the audio recording of the meeting. It's about 90 minutes long and quite different than what we should be used to in any public meeting. It took me several days to process what I saw and heard fully, and there are a couple of concerns I feel need to be addressed by the elected officials of the city. I'm not looking for any resolution today, but I'm simply asking you to, why is Siri talking to me? Not looking for any resolution today, but I'm simply asking you to each look into my concerns and weigh them out with your own findings. The first concern was already discussed about the swearing in at the end of the meeting. I don't think we need to rehash that, so please just make sure that we get that taken care of. The more concerning issue from that evening falls around the behaviors and demeanor of one of the commissioners, Mr. Larson. He was combative for the majority of both the work session and the actual commission meeting, and his directed fury at Commissioner Prince was embarrassing, uncalled for, and could be interpreted as creating a hostile work environment. His fury seemed to begin with a building code standard for roofing that has absolutely nothing to do with the Planning Commission, and continued relentlessly from there about codes, leadership, and the need for change. He continually talked over Commissioner Prince and would not allow her to speak or answer any questions he was raising. It was visibly awkward and uncomfortable to other members of the commission and to some in the attendance of the meeting. Keep in mind this was the first meeting of this newly assembled commission. Personally, I am a believer in differing opinions and healthy, productive discussion around conflicts and those differing opinions. As adults and representatives of the city or of our personal interests with the city, we should be expected to have respectful conversations and discourse. What took place last week at the commission meeting was none of those things. Commissioner Prince does not need me or any of us carrying water for her. In my opinion, she has proven herself to be influential, well-studied and versed, and actively pursuant for what she believes is the best course for Hooper. I don't always agree with her, but find that she is open to discussion and appreciative of different points of view. I'm positive she can stand up for herself, but I will not sit quietly by when she was treated the way she was by Mr. Larson. Again, I'm asking each of you to review the Planning Commission meeting from January 9th and ask if this is representative of what you would like to see in Hooper with our Planning Commission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Excuse me, but we don't applaud in our city council meetings. but
Jake
we-
Kelso. I'm a resident of Hooper.
That's true. Let's not have a lot of noise.
There was a lot of talk today about transparency and communication, but I'm noticing the last few meetings have not had citizen comment at the beginning. Those were always there before, but now they're gone. So I don't know why there's all this talk of transparency and communication when you are trying to shut it down. Also, in where it is allowed, it's clearly not allowed to speak about agenda items. So it's like you're just completely trying to shut everybody down.
Okay, I will give you an answer to that.
I didn't ask for an answer.
Oh, okay, I want to explain. So when I became mayor, I put the comments at the beginning. They had never been on there before.
Oh, yeah,
And at the bottom, they were at on agenda items. I was given that advice by the lawyer that we do not have them at the beginning and we have them at the end, as the same as it is on Planning Commission. Planning Commission does not have comments at the beginning. Planning Commission only has them at the end on items that are not on the agenda, and we were recommended to follow suit. So that's when we changed it. Okay, any other comments?
Let me give you a reason for that.
Yeah.
The idea of having it in the beginning and having them talk about things on the agenda essentially makes every meeting a public hearing. Because they can talk about anything they want that's on the agenda, and that's not the purpose.
That was the reason of the change, not a lack of transparency on my part. It was from legal advice. Okay, anybody else have a comment? Okay, seeing no other public comments then, I will have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, we've had a motion, a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay,
Aye.
thank you.